I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Gresser, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Brady? Here. Klein? Here. Mr. Lockhart?
Here.
Mr. Murray?
Here.
Mr. Waddington?
Here.
Ms. Lloyd?
Here.
Mr. Poole?
Here.
Commissioners, you have before you the minutes of our meeting of January 9, 2017. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd.
I move that we accept the minutes of January 9th meeting and dispense with the formal reading.
Second.
Got a motion, second discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved. We turn now to a presentation by our Erie County Health Department Director, Pete Shea. Thank you, Pete, for being here, and we look forward to your remarks.
Good, thank you, and on behalf of the Board of Health, I appreciate everybody's time and consideration for tonight. So what I want to go over is just a few things that, administratively that the Health Department is and how we're composed, and then I want to talk about a couple particular issues that I think is going to involve the citizens in the city as we move forward with some new programs. But So, of course, the Erie County Health Department, we're not a agency under the county commissioners. We represent the entire of the county, of which we have 9 townships, 5 villages, and 3 principal cities. So you all should know also that we cover all of the health jurisdiction of the city of Vermillion, which does go into Lorain County as well. The Board of Health that serves the health district has 11 members. 5 are appointed by the city of Sandusky. And that goes back to the days of 1982 when we merged the city health department with the county health department. And we became a combined general health district. The other 6 folks are appointed by what we call the District Advisory Council, which is made up of the Board of Commissioners, President, and the mayors of the townships and villages out in the district. And we've become recently accredited for our Public Health Accreditation Board. I think we were the 38th health department out of 3,500 in the nation to achieve that. So we're pretty proud of being one of the first ones. The mission statement, basically, which I'm not going to read, is just all about disease prevention. So every program that we have, every service we provide is aimed at preventing a disease in the community. With that, we are the co-applicant of what's called the Erie County Community Health Center, which is a funded program by the Health Resources and Services Administration from Washington. This is the health center where we do provide primary care, oral health care, behavioral care, and other services to our citizens in our community and to people from about 7 to 8 other counties from across Ohio. And we track everybody through their zip codes, so we know what our draw is. The health center is, like I said, fully funded. We get about $650,000 a year from the feds to help pay for the clinicians that we have there. The Health Center Board of Directors has 11 members as well. And you can see in your blue folder that you got a copy of on the left-hand side are 2 rosters. One is a roster of the Health Board, the other is the roster of the Health Center. So the Health Center, Community Health Center Board is meets with us once a month and helps us with the day-to-day governance of how we provide care for our community. A big part of the health department, of course, is epidemiology and surveillance. Epidemiology, of course, being the study of disease, and right now we've got several outbreaks in the community. Flu levels are on the uptake, so our staff is pretty busy trying to figure out how to put these wildfires of disease out before they spread even more. And, we are involved quite heavily with bioterrorism preparedness, the emergency room. We monitor what people are in there for. So we know if all of a sudden 25 people are presenting with some kind of a rash or GI upset, then we know something's going on in the community when those numbers start to get too high. One other thing is we monitor over-the-counter pharmaceutical sales. So we know through our data system if a lot of like kaopectate is being sold or sinus medication. So we also track disease that way. And on the bottom of the slide, you can see all the different plans that we have in place for response to the community, of which most are practiced, and we have tabletop and functional exercise all through the year with those plans. So the budget for 2017 has gotten quite large, almost 12 million from this year, about 8 million. Most of that obviously is the opioid epidemic with our expansion into the detox facility, the medically supervised detox, then the associated index and object codes that go along with the cost of a detox center and an inpatient rehab that we're building. And just, for the levy, we have a 1 mil levy, or 1 mil total levy, which is made up of 3 different mills, a 0.2, a 0.3, and a half mil. And we always like to say, a $100,000 house, it's costing that owner about $26.87 per year to support the health department. That right now is 18% of our budget. And I think in '05, that was about 47% of our budget was a levy. So where did all that other money come from? It came from grants and other revenue streams that we went out and received. And you can see on this slide where the grants are. I don't have them all broken down, obviously, but you can see the number. In 2011, we were at about 1.2 million. Now we're at 3.2 million. And I just got word today that we have a couple 100,000 more coming in. So, the big function of public health in any community is to do an assessment, of which you guys know we do the health assessments on a cyclical basis. That's where we get the data to show what do we need to do for our community. And that's where we got the data that said we didn't have any dental care for folks who didn't have, medical mutual or some kind of prime insurance. Then with that data from the assessment, we developed policy to put together, again, as an example, the dental clinic that we have. And the third core function of what we need to do in our community is to assure you, the citizens and folks here at the city, that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing as a department, as an agency. So the org chart right now, we have about 100 people working at the health department, 102, I think it says, on the bottom. You can see on the left, our new section will be the behavioral health section, which we've got a couple people hired for. This will be the group that will be handling the inpatient medically supervised detox and the rest of the circle of care programs. We need the gatekeeper to figure out where people are in their care recovery. So it's another section that we've bit off. And if you go back to our mission statement, addiction is a disease, and this is something that we want to take the lead on in our community. So just some of the other divisions that exist at the health department. Of course, we've got a constructions division where we do all the plumbing inspections around the county, except for the city of Sandusky and I think of Vermillion. I want to talk a little bit more in length about the lead paint remediation, and then environmental health, community health, and public health nursing, of course. Our backbone to public health. One of our biggest programs is WIC, Women, Infant, and Children. And you can see there on the bottom, we see about 2,900 moms and kids a month. We also have a WIC office in Norwalk, so we serve Huron County as well. Our Vermillion office sees a lot of folks from across Lorraine County, not just Vermillion. I don't know where we would be without WIC, truly, because it's a nutritional supplemental education program for moms. And, we get a chance to interact with moms and their little ones and make sure they're being fed properly and their brains are developing appropriately for their age. So the administrative office obviously is where we do our financial planning and vital statistics and strategic planning and everything you see on there. Performance management is a big part of the health department. So one of the things we just recently completed was this regional response water lab. And if anybody wants to come down and tour it, it would be flattering for us to have you there. But we took an old garage and converted it over into a facility where we can do primarily algal bloom testing right here on the lake, because there's nowhere around this part of the country for that testing to happen. And we can also be a redundant sampling location for municipal water, as well as well water, other recreational water sources, and effluent discharge. The HUD lead grant was something that we just re-upped for and received, and it's based on, a lot of things here with the city and with the rest of the county. And because of our aging housing stock, we know we have a lot of issues with lead-based paint. So this grant in particular will go out and we will work with people to remediate lead-based hazards in homes. And there's criteria that you have to apply for us to come out and do that. But it's $3 million over 3 years. So it's a pretty robust remediation grant. And this is the second one we've had in the last 5 years. So here's a map of the county. More particularly, there's a neighborhood in there that is glowing red or orange. This is a real problem. This is a neighborhood in Sandusky where we've got the childhood lead poisoning potential is through the roof. And that's what I want to talk about, not so much tonight, but at another meeting with a open participation with the city and the community. We've got to do something about a known hazard that we have. We have kids entering rental units and becoming lead sick. And it's just unacceptable for anyone to put up with. And the plain piece of paper that you have are just two case in points. We had the first child that we knew was really sick is down at Akron Children's Hospital. His blood lead level in August was 181. And we take action at the number 5. So this child is very, very sick, has a host of other issues, and was living in a rental housing unit without any landlord participation or education towards lead prevention. And this little boy was eating paint chips and is really, really sick. And then just recently, last week, we received word that a 4-year-old was living in a rental unit in town. His blood level was elevated. And they moved to another rental unit, and his sibling's blood level was even higher. So we've got some, case definitions of some real problems we need to work on, and I'm looking forward to working with the city and the commission on what can we do as an agency with the city and with the partnership of people in the community to put an end to this known scourge. I mean, we're worried about the algal blooms, we're worried about the opioid addiction, and right in front of us is a known killer, a known toxin, neurotoxin that's poisoning our kids. And once they get poisoned, they're never going to be a fully represented in our community, and their quality of life is diminished forever. So just some more data from the state, so you don't think I made it up. It's pretty dire, and we need to do something about it. And I also plan to go to Huron and Vermillion and talk to those two cities about the same thing. Lead-based paint is everywhere because it worked so well. So now we're paying for it. So again, on the health center side of the health department, we offer a full range of primary care, dental care. We have the mobile health vehicle, which is now equipped for dental services. We've been going to the schools and some other places to do some exams and services for kids that need dental work. And of course, the behavioral health services have picked up a lot at the department. That's just a picture of the dental facility, some of the different chairs. And as we already talked about, behavioral health is a big part of the future. There is a picture of the detox blueprint. Purple is the color of recovery, so I had them put that in there. That's where it'll be in relation to the other buildings on the campus, so it'll kind of close in the courtyard. That's just, the site map. That area on the left is actually a second story, where that's what we call the clubhouse, where anybody working with folks who are addicted have free office space to coordinate the care for the people that are there. I think that's really important, that people are there face-to-face, handshake to handshake, working together on behalf of our community instead of the internet or a phone call. And we call that whole process our circle of care. So, detox is really important. You have to purge the drug from them, get them in inpatient treatment, and everything else down the line. So the message is the services are available, and if they're not, they're coming. Outreach and enrollment's very important. And last but not least, wouldn't be me if I didn't plant a seed. I'd like to someday take the whole health department campus, turn it into what I call a county hospital for psychiatric care, behavioral health care, anything to do with any kind of an addiction, and look to build a more efficient building for the health department and health center, much smaller and much more efficient in size. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Shade. Commissioners, questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wantington.
Mr. Shade, what about, I know the lead paint, that's been around, that's a big problem because we have older stock
Yeah.
or homes in city of Sandusky, but countywide, what about lead pipes that are in-house for drinking water? Do you ever do any testing for that? Because a lot of older homes have lead pipes. Water sits all night, you make your coffee, guess what you're drinking?
Right. So the lead that we're worried about is in the kids 5 and under. But you're right, there's a lot of lead solder and lead pipes, and we know we can't tear all those up and replace all of those, but there are replacement parts for the indoor plumbing, which helps remediate lead out of the water. There's no safe lead level. However, our focus is on the paint and the friable lead dust that's created from walking across a floor, or open and closing a window. The water, if we run the water, like our parents always said, run the water for a couple seconds before you get a drink. I thought it was just to make the water colder, but I think they were ahead of their time back then. So yeah, to kind of answer your question, Dave, I think it's important to run the water, but water isn't the big focal point of lead poisoning.
I had my half-inch, I think it was half-inch, three-quarter line. They didn't even know how water got through it. And this has been like 15 years ago, I switched to PVC, but he said a straw wouldn't have fit through it. I couldn't believe it when they cut it, and I looked
There's a
at
lot
it.
of buildup in those.
I got an older home, so I just, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
thank you, Mr. Shade, for this presentation. I have a particular interest in the children being affected by the lead paint issue, so looking forward to kind of seeing what we can do on that, the city as with the health department.
That's great. I appreciate that.
Chairman.
Mr. Poole.
Mr. Shade, I realize that you deal with folks at the state all the time, and if lead's such a large problem, is there a reason that we don't have legislation that requires testing of rental property since they're commercial, and providing notice to people that are renting from them? I mean, we get notice about cigarettes and just about every ill known to man. Maybe you have an insight, or maybe you don't.
Yeah, well, we've had legislation in the past. I believe it was House Bill 248, and I forget which General Assembly it was, but we talked about that, and a lot of that was morphed and changed, and it never came to fruition in the residential impact of lead poisoning. But it did give us some guidelines on how to deal with the lead when we did find it. So it did some good, but yeah, there's no across-the-board legislative effort. I think it's up to us to fix it.
Is that
I think the problem's so big, they don't know how to tackle it.
Is that something that the public needs to write their congressman or their state representative? Because it seems you have no way of finding out where it is until the children are already damaged.
Right, well, and that's
And without some state leadership I don't see any solution. I mean, after the kids are already damaged for life, it's a bit late.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think to run off with what Toledo did and Cleveland's looking at, we'd like to propose, and that's just in a rental environment. There's still kids in their own home environment or who go to grandma's house. So we have to do a lot of education. Folks have to realize what a danger lead really is to a developing kid or a fetus. You know, we test all the pregnant moms for lead. We do blood sticks. We do everything we can to educate people about it. But a lot of folks, as we know, their back's to the wall. They don't have another place to go move into or move out of, and they don't have that luxury. And meanwhile, their kids are getting sick. And it's costing us in the long run. So Wes, I'd be glad to work on something. Let's see how this rolls out for us here and show the rest of the state how to do it.
Commissioners, further questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd?
Mr. Shea, thank you so much for your presentation. So how easy is it to test for lead?
Very
For those at
easy.
home.
Right, there's a lot of different components, you know, the visual component, all the way up to dust wipes, and then we have some pretty sophisticated equipment that we could actually run like an X-ray type pattern on the floor on paint chips or something to determine what the level is. So it's pretty simple.
So at the end of last year, we passed some rental registration requirements. So if we could work together, if we put internal inspections on there, it could be found at that time.
Right, I think that's what we're aiming to do, and again, you know, not to be big government and big brother, but this is a situation we have to corral. And I think if we present this to folks who are doing rental properties, it makes sense for them not to have the liability in their pocket for making a kid sick. And it doesn't cost that much money to really remediate that threat.
Mr. Brady?
Mr. Shea, you've through your leadership of the health department, you've allowed our health department to serve a whole host of needs, which you've shown us tonight. And the one that I'm most excited about, two that I'm most excited about, is your new opportunity in behavioral health, and certainly in the lead poisoning end. How do you not get overwhelmed with because I see those two as being the scourge of not just our community, but all communities. How do you not apply a disproportionate share of your budget towards those two needs? You've done an excellent job, by the way.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Well, a couple things, Mr. Brady. We have a strategic plan that we follow, and we use the data from those health assessments to figure out where we're going. So we're 3 to 5 years ahead from where we are today. And the management group is there. The Board of Health has supported us. We have the power to sit in a room and come up with the ways and the hybrid solutions to meet a lot of these issues. And quite frankly, most of them dovetail together anyway. So what we do in one area is going to affect another, like behavioral health and lead poisoning. To go like that.
Sure. Those two are certainly on the forefront of most people's lives and minds right now. And you're doing a marvelous job with your leadership, and kudos to the board that you've put together, to pull this off. I hope that when you come back here next year, we can talk about the success specifically of those two programs.
You mean next month?
Next month, okay. Next month will be even better.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Poole.
one more question. The lead test that you talked about, do you have an idea, ballpark, what it costs per test?
It's cheap, $8. For some of the dust wipes, $5, $8. I mean, there's administrative costs, and we're not looking at all that. We're looking at how do we hit the road running so your nephew or your grandson or your son can be in a safe environment at the least cost to everybody.
Okay.
That's what we're looking for.
Mr. Shea, I want to thank you for the leadership that you and your board provide, echoing Mr. Brady's comments, and for the hard work that all your folks do. We are very fortunate to have as engaged a health department in Erie County. Most counties don't have anything like what we have, and thank you for what you and all your folks do.
Appreciate everybody. Thank you for your support.
All right, next we turn to audience participation. Anyone wishing to address the commission on any of our agenda items tonight, please step to the microphone, give us your name and address, and share with us your thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tim Schwanger, 362 Sheffield Way, representing Save Our Shoreline Parks this evening. The First item is, I'm going to kind of jump around here a little bit maybe, but the first item is number 7, which has to do with the complete redo of the Jackson Street Pier. I'm going to keep in mind, because I know I'm going to be reminded of this, but this is just a conceptual drawing. Totally understand that. But when I see this rendition back in February, okay, this came from city architecture, and then this rendition, which is in the paper today, 5 months have gone by, and really the public doesn't see any change in this rendition from the one that was handed out in February. And I was really hoping, as representing our group, that there would be more consideration towards the general public, the elderly, the handicapped, to preserve some of the parking spaces along the water's edge. Now, in the new rendition, it looks like the parking has moved out a little bit more towards the north end of the pier, but not significantly. I know that in the 5-year budget, the city has budgeted $2.6 million for this project. And the reason why I'm bringing it to you today is because I want to get it on the record. Because once we move forward with community meetings, a lot of times, these type of comments don't get into the notes. So I'm making my comment today so it gets into the record. I'm hoping that we can really, really scale this project back. Whether it be, some additional green space, and maybe some more defined, detailed areas for maybe food carts. But some of these other plans, and again, I'll remind myself, this is just a rendition. How many amphitheaters do we need in the city of Sandusky? We've got one at the west end at the Paper District Marina. There's plans maybe to put one on this property. So as we move forward, let's do what's right for the general public, not what's right for a bar or what's right for a hotel. Let's take a look at the overall general public and try to preserve some of the things that we have on that pier currently. Okay, that's my comment on that. The second item is number 2, which has to do with the former Hoppers trailer park and the Sunoco, the former Sunoco gas station that the city is now cleaning up. Did a little bit of research on NRP properties. I think it's the same group. I don't know if somebody's here representing them or not, but it appeared to me that they were here at the city commission back in 2006. And they wanted to do a project of 50 homes that were going to be owner occupied. Okay. So my question on today's agenda is, rather than going with their proposal for senior rental housing, which we all know we're already at 70% rentals in the city of Sandusky, why aren't we looking to NRP properties to do an actual home ownership development in that area, which would be similar to what out on Venice Road, they got the Snow Court. I don't know if everybody's familiar with Snow Court, but it's just down from the Coal Creek Crossings development. Especially when I hear from this group here at the table that we want more home ownership. Now, the other question pertaining to this is, I don't recall, maybe somebody can straighten me up when I sit down, but I don't recall an RFP going out for this property. Don't know why. I mean, I've looked at what this group's done, and there's some stuff that's being done in Cleveland through this group, so I don't know if this goes back to maybe our city manager's familiar with this group, and we just decided to choose this group, and that's the way we're going to go. The other part of this project is I've attended every single city, absolutely the second round of the neighborhood initiatives, okay? And the people on the west side over and over again said that we would like to have an anchor project, whether it be a grocery store or what have you, some kind of retail commercial right there where the Sunoco gas station site is. But according to this plan, the entire area is going to be used for the senior rental housing aspect of this particular project. So that's a concern with the people in the West End.
Thank you, Mr. Schwager.
Sue Doherty, Director of Serving Our Seniors of Erie County. I am here to express that I'm in favor of the sale of the property for the senior housing that is being proposed. Serving Our Seniors has been advocating, although we don't have the means to do anything about constructing more affordable housing for older adults, we are seeing it being a need. And actually even beyond Sandusky. So it's my hope that maybe the city of Sandusky could be a trendsetter, because what we are seeing is many older adults who thought that they would be retiring with benefits that they didn't get since the Great Recession. And also, we've found that there are more divorces in later life. And so when the couples break up in retirement or near retirement, the preparedness that they thought that they would have after they were no longer working is no longer the case, and predominantly it's women that's affected, older women. And so there is a very clear need that we haven't been able to substantiate with a study, and that's our next course. But anecdotally, we can tell you in our office that there is a great need for affordable housing for older adults, and probably even more so for individuals who won't qualify for a rental adjustment for income. These will be individuals who will be over income for these types of programs. That too will be another situation where retirees are not going to be able to afford to keep their home because they have too much debt. And they're also, and when they lose their spouse, their mortgage does not decrease when your spouse passes away. And so they're going to lose that home, and then all they're going to have is the market rate rent, which is anywhere from $750 to $850 plus your own utilities. So serving our seniors as a strong proponent for more affordable rental housing for older adults, and we applaud the effort to bring this to the city of Sandusky.
Thank you, Ms. Doherty.
Hi, my name is Barbara Linden. I live out to Millwood Village. I'm here to talk to you about Jackson Street Pier. I'm asking you to please consider the senior citizens of Sandusky and the handicapped. The Jackson Street Pier is the only one that we can go to, that we can park down there and fish out of there. It's the only dock in Sandusky. We use that dock every day. I go down there every day and just sit and watch the water. People go down there and eat lunch in their cars. But if we can't pull on there with our cars, where are we going to go? We really don't have anywhere else to go. I ask you to consider that, please.
Thank you, Ms. Linden.
Nancy Beach, 401 West Shoreline Drive, Sandusky. I'm here about Jackson Street Pier 2. Jackson Street Pier is pretty much my front yard since I moved into the Chesapeake. I face it. Right now, before I left, there were 15 cars on Jackson Street Pier, just looking at the water. I know elderly people that go down there, go to Cobb's first, get an ice cream cone, go down, sit and look at the water. I love the rendering. I think it's absolutely beautiful, and it would certainly look beautiful for me to look out and see that. But I think we can compromise on this and still have a little bit of a drivable experience. You know, you have the whole outer point of the pier. You've got enough space, you could still have a couple lanes, because the rendering shows a great summertime experience and spring and fall, but in the winter, you still have cars down there. I mean, literally, it can be Christmas morning during a blizzard, and there's going to be a car on Jackson Street Pier at 2 in the morning. I mean, people come if they are on third shift and they want a break for lunch. It really is utilized, and I never realized that when I lived on East Adams Street in Sandusky. But the last 9 years, I have been amazed and pleasantly surprised at how many people do utilize it. I would hate to see all those people be out of a place to go. So possibly we can do a compromise and try to make it beautiful, keep the green space, but yet make it still, let's have that drivable experience, especially for our elderly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beach.
Good evening, Nick Pasqualini, 527 Garland Avenue. I'm also here in regards to the Jackson Street Pier. And we had a meeting here in the room a week and a half ago, and Mr. Murray spoke up, you know, that the people from out of town don't spend any money in town that come to use the Jackson Street Pier while they're out in their boats or going to the islands. I have two things about that. Number one is, has there ever been a survey taken to see how many people do spend overnight or eat in the city of Sandusky or surrounding areas? The other part is, if it's planted up fully with trees, how much money does the city plan on getting from the trees? They're not going to spend any money. They're not going to bring any revenue in either. So I ask that you redesign your concept a little bit too and think of the local people that use the pier quite often. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pasqualini.
Chris Parthmore, 111 East Madison Street. I also lived at Chesapeake, right down the hall from Nancy, for a long time, and I agree completely. One thing I always saw when I lived there was that there's always 10 to 15 cars out there, always utilizing the end of the pier. But I would argue that that's underutilizing that space. That just means a whole heck of a lot of the rest of the pier always sits empty and is just vast asphalt. I was in Chicago a couple weeks ago, staying up in Lincoln Park, for anyone that knows Chicago, and I went for a run along the lakefront, past Millennium Park down to Shedd Aquarium, and one thing that struck me is there was no parking anywhere. They have a very nice pier there. There was no parking out on the pier, but it was utilized by people of all ages, the entire waterfront. There were people fishing. There were people, even this time of year, out running, and it was a vibrant area. Last year, a group of us went to Duluth, Minnesota to see how they utilize their waterfront. I think there's a good number of people in the room right now that were on that trip. And again, there is not waterfront parking in that space, but it is very, very utilized by people of all ages. Whether it's a biking trail, whether it is an ice skating rink, or parks, amphitheaters, of which they have a very big one. The space was designed to be utilized. The entire space was utilized to be, designed to be utilized all year round by many, many people, not just the people that want to sit in their car at the end of a pier.
Thank you, Mr. Parthmore.
Hi, my name is Dan Allen. I've been a Sandusky resident my whole life until this past year when my wife got me to move to Huron Township. The Jackson Street Pier has been actually a part of my life pretty much going onward. It's always been a place to park. We called it, in our family, the 25-cent tour to check out the system. And that was one of the main stops down there. It's great to go get a fish sandwich down at what was Demores. Go down and enjoy yourself the view. It's about 180 degrees at least of a beautiful view. At night, it's great to see either Cedar Point lights or the loading dock lights. It's a comforting, reassuring view. To take away the parking down there, I think, is a mistake. I really do. There could be other things up closer to the Water Street or Shoreline Drive, and that's another thing. There's already a park at Shoreline. There's Battery Park. There's already a couple of fast food, or not fast food, but food type sales things down on the pier. And that's a good idea. I like that. I can't imagine building a building down there, which I had heard at some point. I don't like that idea. Obviously, I don't like a lot of things, but I just wanted to put my 2 cents in for the Jackson Street Pier and leaving it the opportunity for a lot of people to go down there and park any time of the year, in any weather. It's great to watch a storm come across the bay. That's really refreshing at some time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. I think that was actually 27 cents. It was a 25-cent tour and your 2 cents, so thank you for it both.
Dale Chris, lifelong resident of Sandusky, and I'm here also about the Jackson Street Pier. This was brought up a while ago, and at that meeting it was tabled. Now it's back, I guess. And I feel the same way all these people do. Anytime I'm downtown, I go down to that pier. Me and my wife, I meet people down there. I had residents come and say, hey, do you know where so-and-so is? I can never find him. I said, go down the pier, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, you'll find him. Next time I ran into him, hey, I went down there and I ran into him down there. And the way you do things down here anymore, I can't see it and don't agree with it. What worries me, you bring this stuff up and then you vote on it. In 2 weeks, you pass it. And people don't even have the time to look at this and see what's going on, and you guys pass it. I believe that's totally wrong with a whole lot of things you've been doing down here. But mainly, everybody I talk to, they bring up the old Battery Park pier where you used to be able to drive out on. There's a heck of a lot of people that are against that, and I think you need to think about this real well, because some of us as homeowners around here, seem to be paying a lot of bills around here that a lot of renters aren't, and there's only so much we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. And we're not going to debate all of the folks who come up and speak tonight. This is for a public comment period, but I would like to note that the process that is being proposed through the communication from staff is one that would have us have a period of public comment and input for about the next 9 to 10 months. So it's going to be quite a while.
Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, Mike Meinzer, 413 Cove Street, Sandusky, and Mr. Murray just kind of beat me to the punch, but and I just came to see what the feelings were tonight in reading this and this legislation. I think that nobody's in argument here. I think that everybody is for that. That's a beautiful piece of property to be wasted as a parking space, the whole thing. So I think what I hear is everybody likes to have it as a public space, and everybody wants to have maybe some elderly to go down and have their ice cream or have lunch or something. So there's going to be a compromise, from what I hear, as you go through the process. So I say you move through with the engineering tonight, vote for it, and then over the next 10 months, as you say, then you iron out the details of it. So I haven't heard anybody argue about that's way too nice a piece of property just to park a car, leave it sit there for the weekend. So thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Anyone else?
Sharon Johnson, 1139 Fifth Street. I think it's a tradition. The Jackson Street Pier is a tradition to go down there. In the summertime, you can hardly find a parking space down there. In the drawing I saw, it looks beautiful, but it's not conducive to what we want to do in this area. You have to take into consideration that we live here all year round. Sure, it's for the vacationers, but we live here all year round. Vendors, I read where there's going to be vendors on that pier. We have restaurants. Why are we putting vendors on that pier? And the parking, I'm not clear on that. If you could explain that to me. Are you making another parking lot somewhere else off the pier? I still have concerns about the boating industry down there. How are they going to cope with this? Sure, you heard from Jet Express in the paper, but they're kind of indirectly related to all of that. They may use some parking on the dock there, but I'm concerned about the good time, and if you're going to be bringing in the Canadian boat, I think you better look at this really carefully. Also, in the design, I saw fencing all the way around the pier. Looks like there's a 4-foot fencing around there. Now, how are you going to fish off the pier when there's a fence there? I hope that you will listen to the people, that this is not going to be a dog and pony show, and then you go and you do what you want to do and go back to the drawing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Lori Chris, 1334 Fifth Street. Yes, I have lived here all my life, and I have seen a lot of people that go out on that dock, and they appreciate it. Leave well enough alone. That's their relaxation. Some people can't exactly walk the route, go and take long walks. You know, it's nice to see people gather and talk and have good conversations and relate. And you want to take it away for some trees?
Thank you, Ms. Chris. Is anyone else present who wishes to address the commission on any of tonight's agenda items? All right, then
Mr.
we.
Chairman?
Ms. Poole.
Just before we go forward, as you can see, much of this, the different comments are based on how people want to utilize the facility, and I think we will work that out in the end. I do want to point out, though, one of the comments need to be accurate. The comment was made about no parking being on the water, Duluth, Minnesota. This parking lot's bigger than our lot. This is on Duluth, Minnesota. There's probably 300 cars parked right on the waterfront. Now, we can have the conversation based on how we want to utilize it, but we need to be accurate when we're making comparisons about other places and what is and is not appropriate. You can Google it, it's right on Lake Superior at the Lake Superior Maritime Center in Duluth. That's all I wanted to say, and I just want to be sure we discuss this accurately and make sure that everybody gets heard.
All right, then we will have a hearing next on a zoning map amendment at 2513 Venice Road at 1651 Tiffin Avenue. This hearing is now open, and go ahead and please make your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Commission. The City of Sandusky has applied for an amendment to the zoning map for 2513 Venice Road and 615 Tiffin Ave. As the Commission will recall, these properties are the former Sunoco Station and the former Hopper site. The property located at 2513 Venice Road is currently zoned as limited manufacturing and general business. The property located at 1651 Tiffin Ave is currently zoned as general business. The application is to rezone both properties as residential multifamily. Within the past year, the Development Department has received inquiries from developers for potential locations for multifamily development sites within the city. Staff believes that this location would be an appropriate location for multifamily development and has close proximity to local retailers, recreational amenities, and transient access. Staff also believes that a multifamily development will benefit the general public as it will provide additional housing options on the west side of the city, as well as aesthetically improving a blighted intersection within our city. The city's comprehensive plan recommends this area for industrial redevelopment. The city's development department does not believe that the properties will be logistically suited for industrial development, and there has not been interest from retail or commercial developers. The proposed amendment does address priorities listed in our bicentennial vision plan to create a vibrant and livable city. These can be accomplished by reclaiming and repurposing blighted sites for redevelopment and support development and rehabilitation for a variety of housing types to meet the needs of our current residents. Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of this zoning amendment at the November 30th, 2016 meeting, and planning staff would recommend that the City Commission approve the proposed amendment for both 2513 Venice Road and 1651 Tiffin Ave.
Thank you, Ms. Sparks. Commissioners, questions or comments? This is a public hearing, and anyone present wishing to speak at this hearing, this is item number 5 on our regular items of legislation this evening. But anyone wishing to speak to this particular issue is welcome to do so now. And not seeing anyone getting up to speak, thank you, Ms. Sparks, and this hearing is closed. We will turn now to our regular agenda items. And Commissioners, if someone would care to make a motion to accept the communications from staff, I'd appreciate that.
So moved.
And a motion and second. Discussion? Without objection, the motion will be approved. In hearing no objection, the motion is approved. We turn now to our consent agenda items. Commissioners, are there any items that you wish to see removed from the consent agenda? If not, then would someone care to make a motion to consider those items?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Waddington.
I make the motion to accept the consent agenda items A, B, C, D as presented to the City Commission on the consent agenda and shall take effect in accordance with section reflected in the ordinances and/or resolutions, whether it be accordance with section 13 or 14 of the city charter.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Ms. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Murray, if I may, as a point of order, we need to read these into the record first.
My apologies.
Okay. Ready? Consent agenda item A is authorization to accept 5 parcels of land through the city's land bank program. Item B is the transfer of 2 properties from the city's land bank program to the Erie County Land Reutilization Corporation. Item C is a resolution of necessity for the CDBG fiscal year 2016 residential demolition project for 7 residential properties. And consent agenda item D is a new liquor permit with the Ohio Division of Liquor Control for Bait House Brewery LLC, 223 Meg Street.
This is the same reason they don't give the Irish a coffee break. It takes too long to retrain them. And between 2 weeks, I forget on this new procedure. So, thank you. Mr. Harris, are we good on the procedure?
We are great on the
Okay,
procedure.
very good.
Irish. I take offense to that. I'm pretty Irish.
Mrs. Cressy, would you call the commissioners on the motion, please, or poll, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
And now, if Mr. Brady still remembers what the motion is, would you poll the commissioner, because he's also Irish, on the legislation itself, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Those resolutions pass. Item number 1, please.
Item number 1 is a resolution authorizing the filing of an application with the Ohio Development Services Agency for the abandoned gas station cleanup grant program for the former Sunoco gas station property located at 1651 Tiffin Avenue, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine?
I move for the adoption of this resolution under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Mr. Lasko, one more tank and one more grant application, we hope, and we'll get this all taken care of.
Yeah, without question, through you, Mr. President, to the commission and community. The city was fortunate to be granted $100,000 in the spring of 2016. That allowed us to take out the 2 documented underground storage tanks. We've since cleared 3 of the 4 walls of those tanks and remediated the soil and demolished the gas station canopy. But through that process, not being able to clear the 4th wall, we identified an undocumented, undisclosed 3rd tank that would fall outside of the grant limits with the funds we have remaining. Fortunately, the Ohio Development Services Agency still has additional funding at the state level, and we'll be opening up the grant period the next couple days. So we hope to secure another $100,000 to finish the job.
Thank you, Ms. Lasko. Commissioners, questions or comments? Mr. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Now on the resolution?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
That resolution is adopted. Item number 2, please.
Item 2 is an ordinance declaring that certain real property owned by the city located at 2513 Venice Road, identified as parcel number 58-01990.000, and 1651 Tiffin Avenue, identified as parcel number 58-02419.000, are no longer needed for any municipal purpose, and authorizing the execution of an agreement with respect to that real property, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd?
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules and in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Been a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Brady?
Mr. Lasko, we're going to be receiving $262,600 for these 2 parcels, and although that is never going to make this city whole on the amount of dollars that we have in this property through the fiasco of lost water and the cleanup that we were forced to absorb as a city. I guess my question to you is, we have reached out to other commercial entities in the area. I know we reached out to K&K. There was a comment earlier by a citizen regarding we're not just giving this property. We're not just dealing with one person. We have made an effort, and I believe in the public comment section about 10 minutes ago, staff concludes that this is not an ideal site for a commercial piece of property. So would you say that we are close to the best use of this property for the direction they're going?
Yes, through you, Mr. President, to Commissioner Brady, commissioners, rest of the community, and I'll spare the details on the particular proposed buyer, which is NRP. I know Mary Hata is here to provide some background on NRP itself. As it relates to the site, we do believe that multifamily makes sense on this site for multiple factors. One is we know that it's on a transit corridor, and particularly multifamily housing as it relates to the senior community. We know that it's on a transit corridor. We know that it's immediately adjacent to a pharmacy and has shopping across the street within close proximity to recreational activities like golfing. And with the transit being able to take people very quickly to Perkins Avenue and Milan Avenue, we believe it makes perfect sense for multifamily housing on this site. Logistically, we have heard from many folks that it being at a somewhat semi-major intersection provides logistical issues for shipping and receiving and other types of large trucks that would have to come in and out of that site. Believe it or not, although it's large enough for what is proposed to be 50 units of housing, just based on the amount of parking that would be necessary for a large commercial or retail type use, actually 4.5, 5 acres is actually not that large in the grand scheme of things. So we do believe that this is a very good use for that site, not just from a development standpoint, but for the eventual occupants of the property. And I'm happy to, if it makes sense, to get into a little bit of the details of the agreement, if the commission so wishes.
Thank you for the general overview, Mr. Lasko. Mr. Brady, does that address your?
It does, and I'm the purpose of my getting that in the record is that I want our citizens to be convinced, as I am, that we have done our due diligence on this parcel of property. And as much as I abhor the fact that we are buried in, not in debt, but we are buried in cash on this fiasco, a legacy issue for our community, it is time to move forward. This gives us an opportunity to move forward.
Yeah, without question, and to the main point, sort of who could be the sort of a logical user of that property would be K&K Home Division, which has sort of their retail outlet there. I know Eric and Maria and I have met on 1 or 2 occasions with Kyle Camp, who is the owner of K&K, and he's expressed not only no interest in an ownership standpoint in that position in that site, but also he's supportive of a multifamily housing use on that site. So that was important feedback for us to get from what is the largest neighbor of that property.
Great, thank you, Mr. Lasko.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Lloyd.
So, Mr. Lasko, not to put you on the spot, I don't know if you'll know the answer to this, but for NRP going for tax credits, does that make it rental, and that's why there can't be ownership? Kind of addressing Mr. Schwanger's question.
Yeah, and what I can, and Ms. Hata can correct me if I'm wrong, only because I spent 8 years in this space in my former life. The Ohio Housing Finance Agency, I'm almost positive, as of last year, does not permit for what Mr. Schwanger is referring to, which is lease purchase housing, for any place that's not a for non-metro areas. So lease purchase can happen now in Cleveland, Dayton, Cincinnati, Columbus, but for suburban areas, which they would qualify Sandusky for, lease purchase housing is actually not permitted by the Ohio Housing Finance Agency. And my guess is when NRP was here in 2006, that's exactly what they were proposing. It is a home ownership model long-term, but it's actually a 15-year rental product through scattered site single housing. So unfortunately, under the low-income housing tax credit program, OFA would not permit lease purchase home ownership housing in the city of Sandusky.
Thank you.
Commissioners, further questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Poole.
are we going to hear from the purchasers of this or no, or they have nothing to
Purchasers
add?
would like to speak, we would be happy to hear from them.
And we do have I know Ms. Hata has a semi-presentation as well, so.
Please, why not? Why not?
Pretty easy. Hi, I'm Mary Hata with the NRP Group. I am one of the developers. I cover Ohio and Indiana and Michigan. And we're proposing on the site that we had talked to the city about for numerous months now, a senior housing type of development. So I'm going to talk about our group so you realize that we're just not a fly-by-night company. Our proposed development, the economic impacts, we've got a financial summary, and then, of course, the schedule. Oh, I guess I should have been talking the microphone better. And the schedule of how this works with the Ohio Housing Finance Agency. This is the NRP group as it stands right now. We started out just in Cleveland doing scattered site single infill, and we've expanded fairly rapidly since 1996. So the red dots are where we have offices, and then the yellow dots are where we develop. NRP, I know this is small. NRP is a vertically integrated company. So we have a development company, we have a construction company, and we have a management company. And we develop 2,000 to 3,000 units a year. We manage over 18,000 since we started the management company. It used to be third-party managed, but we like to have better control of our asset to make sure that the asset is always looking crisp. This is a little bit of the organizational chart at NRP. This seems to grow every year, but we've got, the breakdown of NRP Contractors, which is the construction company, NRP Management, NRP Holdings, and NRP Holdings is NRP Properties that purchases the land, which is what you would see in the purchase agreement, and then NRP Operations for the fiscal and legal portion of our company. And this is a little bit more about our company, just the number of states that we develop in, and we've been in business for over 20 years doing this, and how many units that we manage and develop every year. So we've got various products that we do develop, and like Matt said, the single-family lease purchase is what we had done previously in all areas, but then the state has restricted that to urban areas and to very confined areas in the city, so they can be managed very closely. We do a 3-story, 2-story, we do a garden-style product, we do student housing, we do very, very high-end market rate housing, and that's mainly in North, South Carolina, Florida, Texas, and we just got done doing the University of Toledo. That would be something familiar to you for student housing. In this area, we've developed in Bowling Green and Norwalk, and in Toledo for senior housing. These are some of the awards that we've won over the last couple years. We're typically the Affordable Housing Developer of the Year or within the top 10. So just so you know, we're legitimate. So what we're proposing, and I can't really see this, but is a 41-unit, 3-story building. This is the building we just built in Findlay. Well, we're finishing up. And along with that, we're proposing 8 cottage-style units up in the front. So this would be a green design building with handicap accessibility and the visitability standards so people can age in place. We have a community center with a fitness room and a cyber cafe and a big living room. And we have offices and storage for the residents in our developments. And what we've designed with this one is a big walking path in the back so they can enjoy the green space. And this is the site plan as it's proposed right now. So the 3-story building would be on the left-hand side with all the community amenities in the 3-story building. And then on the right-hand side are the cottage-style units. And then as you go in the back, that is where the walking path and green space would be. We're also proposing to put a gazebo out in the front. We always have picnic areas and benches and places that they can, large grills so they can have cookouts. The economic benefits, this is about a $9 million development that we're proposing. After it's constructed, the permanent employees would be a property manager and a maintenance person. And the construction would go on for about 12 months. and I don't know how well you could see these numbers, but this breaks down the sources and uses with the investment of the land. On the right-hand side, you see the permanent financing and the construction loan and the deferred developer fee. We also have a gap in this run of the financial summary, so we're still working to fill that gap with some type of soft funds that we can work out. And here is our timeline where we're starting here now in 2017. We apply in February, March. The state has moved their deadline and we're not confirmed as to when. But in March, then we find out in June. And then from June on, we are putting the financing package together, syndicating the tax credits, getting the all the permits from the city and approvals. And then we get the okay to go, and we start construction, and that takes between 9 to 12 months. And then our lease up is usually about 9 months. With all of our properties, we found that they lease up faster than what they're estimated to lease up. And we usually have a long waiting list for phase 2. So, and that's what we have done in a lot of our properties, our phase 2s, because the demand is usually there. They're professionally decorated, they're professionally landscaped, and we feel that we offer a nice product. So these are ones that we've just finished up. Parsons is a 4-story that we did in Columbus next to Mount Carmel Hospital. And Beech Grove on the other side is an example of our cottage style unit that we just finished up in Beech Grove, Indiana, which is outside of Indianapolis. And that's it. Are there any questions?
Ms. Hatta, questions, comments, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
2 questions, and both of them deal with the construction. One, is your financing tied to any type of a prevailing wage criteria? Are you required to use prevailing wage for your?
Right, it is not.
It's not. And the construction end of it, you're bringing in your own construction people, or are you subbing out to local construction people?
We sub everything out. We don't have a hammer in our office. We just have project managers and construction superintendents.
So very high probability that work would be accomplished by, if not residents of Sandusky, certainly residents of Erie County.
Yes, we have a whole formal bidding process that we meet with everyone in the city to make sure that everyone has the same potential to bid on the project.
Sure. Great, thank you.
Mr. Lockhart.
You know, I'm on the West End. I'm a resident over there, so I appreciate this new development over there. Driving past what was the old mobile home park was kind of an eyesore, and then we started to see it coming apart. It's kind of a mess over there. And it's a huge value when you look at the senior citizens, because versus they have a senior citizens village there on Route 6. Versus that, there's direct access to the transportation. Like they said, there's a pharmacy there, there's golfing that they can go to, there's a new dollar store. So it does bring a lot of convenience to the senior citizens. And when I'm on the ADA commission, when you look at those things, it's much easier for their life to be, well-rounded. They have a better work or life balance over there. So I really appreciate this development, and I hope this works out very well.
Yes, that's one of a lot of the criteria that we were looking at when we first looked at this site was the availability of amenities in the area, especially for seniors, and with transportation as well. The city and the community members, as far as working with the health department, working with Sue Doherty, working with Marvin, I can't remember his name, with the bus line, everyone has been amazing. I wish all the cities were like Sandusky.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Poole.
Say thank you. I'm so happy that your company sees that we have a market for your product. I was at your Parsons property in Columbus yesterday, and it is very nice, and I look forward to you building it here and filling it up.
Well, I'm glad you checked this out, because we tell people go to one of our properties anytime. We don't even let the property manager know anyone's coming, because they're supposed to be on their toes all the time. Property's supposed to look good.
Further questions or comments, commissioners? Well, thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for NRP for bringing this project to us. I think it's going to be a very exciting development. We're glad to see the investment out in that area, in which was indicated by Mr. Lockhart was a real eyesore for many years. So we're very grateful for that opportunity, and as Ms. Doherty indicated, it looks like it's going to serve a very real need in our community, and your track record indicates this is going to be a great product. So thank you for being here.
Yes, we're crossing our fingers because about 1 in 3, 1 in 4 get funded from the state.
We know that's a risk, and that has something to do with the next item. But
yes.
Unless there are further questions or comments, Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 3, please.
Item 3 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to waive certain building and engineering fees associated with the development of the property located at 2513 Venice Road, identified as parcel number 58-01990.000, and 1651 Tiffin Avenue, identified as parcel number 58-02419.000, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this resolution under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
There's been a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
I had some serious reservations regarding this piece of legislation because I'm very realistic from the standpoint that once you start waiving fees, it never stops. There's always a good candidate or a good reason why we should do this. It's a hospital, it's a school, it's a nonprofit. My understanding, though, is that as this lady shared with us just moments ago, this opportunity has a 1 in 4 chance of succeeding. And their financing is tied to the city's participation in some way on the application process. Without that, I think the opportunity for this succeeding maybe goes to 1 in 10. And I'm going to bite through my lip and vote for this legislation. In most cases, I would be opposed to this, but I want to give this opportunity every chance of succeeding, and I'm going to not look the other way, but I'm going to realize that without our help, our odds are stacked against us of it happening.
Further questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd.
I just want to say that I understand Mr. Brady's concern, but looking at this for some of the other projects that are going on in town, we've given up to about 10% assistance. And I want to commend Mr. Lasko and Maria putting together another great package. This is only 1.5% of what the total spending is. So while I do understand that, and we don't want to make it a habit of waiving permit fees, I think it's just one more way of us being creative to bring development and new business to town.
Mr. Chairman, as we go forward into 2018, which is our bicentennial, I believe that we should do all we can to help out the neighborhoods in the city. And so if this project helps out the neighborhood, if us approving this waiving of the fees helps out another neighborhood in the city, I'm all for it.
Thank you, Mr. Lockhart. Further questions or comments?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Poole.
I also agree. This project is one of the projects that unquestionably is going to be of value to citizens in the community. And I'll be more than happy to waive $25,000 on a $9 million project to anybody that brings one this way that will have this kind of impact for the citizens. This is $25,000 that we haven't lost. We wouldn't have had it at all if they weren't making the investment in the project.
Further questions or comments? Mr. Brady, I concur with your reservations about this as a bad precedent, but this is a one-off. This is truly a one-off. That the only reason that we're doing it is because it's the key piece that allows the application to proceed on a successful basis. So I think with that in mind, It's quite justified, but it is a one-off.
Agreed.
Further questions or comments? Ms. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd? Yes. Mr. Poole?
Yes.
And now on the resolution?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd? Yes. Mr. Poole?
Yes.
That resolution is adopted. Item number 4, please.
Item 4 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement for professional services with Strand Associates Incorporated of Cincinnati, Ohio, to perform a green infrastructure evaluation, Phase 2 of the city's general plan for combined sewers, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
reading through this agenda item, the thing I like the best is it's got a real good chance of reducing the overflow costs, correct? Aaron, is that, I mean, that's gonna be the biggest thing that I see for it, and that keeps the EPA a day away from us.
Yes, sir.
Maybe a week. So.
Anything you'd care to add to that, Mr. Klein?
Well,
It's rather parsimonious for you.
I didn't get to speak last meeting, so I might as well take it up at this one. Yeah, I think everybody remembers the green infrastructure presentation about 2 months ago. This is the next phase of that. It's part of the EPA CSO negotiations that we're going through. And what we're looking at doing here is we are looking at prioritizing those projects. Last time, we found that there is a possibility to save money on the sewer side of things from what EPA is trying to implement and force down our throats. So right now, what we're trying to do is figure out a way to, where we get the most bang for the buck, how we can start the program, where we can get the most impact by doing these projects. And one of the things that I like about this is that not only can we find the projects, but we're gonna find the projects that we already want to do in our capital plan, things that are already there. Maybe we wanna look at a park, maybe we want, a private piece of property that we might be able to look at, something like that, that we can partner with the community and work on getting these green infrastructure technologies into projects that we already have planned and figure out if that's where we can get the most bang for the buck.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Commissioners, further questions or comments? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd? Yes. Mr. Poole?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 5, please.
Item 5 is an ordinance amending the official zone map of the city of Sandusky to rezone one parcel from limited manufacturing district and general business district, and one parcel from general business district to residential multifamily district.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
It's been a motion and second. Discussion? Of course, this pertains to the items 3 and 4 that we just took up, and it's necessary to allow that to happen. And it's also the subject of the hearing that we had before on the zoning change. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Now on the ordinance?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
That item is adopted. Item number 6, please.
Item 6 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an enterprise zone agreement with Chris Andrews LLC, doing business as Ohio Truck Sales, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules and in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Lockhart.
as I understand, this tax abatement helps to bring another business in the city of Sandusky. If that's the case, and they're gonna be here to bring jobs onto our tax rolls and expanding local business here, I can support this 100%.
Ms. Murtori, I see this is your communication. Would you like to address this and give the commission and the public an overview of what it is we're taking up and what's being proposed to be invested and occur in our community?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the commission. Staff received a request for an enterprise zone tax abatement from Chris Andrews LLC, doing business as Ohio Truck Sales. The company acquired property in the 1700 and 1800 block of George Street with plans to consolidate its two locations, which are currently in Perkins Township, to this George Street location. We have notified Perkins Township of this relocation. Subsequently, the Tax Incentive Negotiating Committee met on December 8th of 2016 and approved a 10-year, 75% tax abatement on the appraised value of the new real improvements to the property. And after that, Sandusky City School Board met on January 12th of 2017 and approved the proposed tax abatement as well. So the final step is now bringing it to you, the City Commission. Ohio Truck Sales purchases, refurbishes, cleans, paints, and resells long-haul semi-trucks. It currently employs a total of 24 full-time employees and plans to hire minimally 10 new full-time employees by December 31st, 2019. The project includes a new 13,000+ square foot building addition and a smaller office addition. Further enhancements include a driveway, parking lot, additional concrete work, wrought iron fence, and gates. The real estate investment is expected to be over $1.2 million, and construction is expected to be complete by December 31st, 2017.
Thank you, Ms. Murtori. Is there a representative of the company here?
Unfortunately, no, he is out of town tonight, so I did ask him to be here, but he could not be here tonight.
Understood. No, I just wanted to thank him for his investment, if he was here. Commissioners, questions or comments? I do want to thank the school board for their support of the tax abatement. This is incredibly important to allow these kinds of investments to occur in our community in the right situation, and this is the right situation. Both our committee and then the school board agreed that that made sense. So, unless there are further comments or questions, Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Now on the ordinance?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 7, please.
Item 7 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Osborne Engineering of Cleveland, Ohio for professional design services for the Jackson Street Pier project, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Waddington.
I met last Friday with Mrs. Byington about this, and some of the questions that I had come up tonight, and this is just a preliminary conceptual drawing that was released to the paper. And then some of the concerns that we have as far as the planning process, the public's gonna be involved. It's not happening this summer. A lot of people think it's gonna be happening in May and June. At least the folks that I've talked to about it since it was in the paper today. But could maybe you expand on, like, what our conversation and my concerns, about that? That was one of my concerns. I'm one of the residents that sit down at the dock a lot with a cup of coffee and a paper once around the morning. So that was also a concern of mine, that possibly we're gonna look at, with public input, of having some parking spots, down there for these residents.
Bonzi, maybe you could answer Mr. Waddington's question if you would, and then give us an overview of how this process would unfold as you have proposed it.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of commission. If it's okay, what I'm going to speak to is both agenda item 7 and 8. And first, I'd like to thank the audience for their comments today. If commission decides to move forward with the 2 contracts that are proposed, we would take your valuable comments as well as all the future public input over the upcoming months and take that into consideration while shaping this plan. And again, what you saw in the paper was just a rendering to inspire some ideas, and I think that it worked. I think that it helped, we got your comments. So again, thank you for that. What the plan is proposed at the end of the day to do is to create an improved pier experience for our residents as well as our visitors with an end plan that not only maintains but enhances the existing uses, which are pedestrian and vehicular access, ferry parking, fishing, and ADA accessibility by providing a more attractive and vibrant pier. Tonight, what's before you is 2 pieces of legislation. One, they're both to enter into contract with Osborne Engineering. One is for Jackson Street Pier and one is for Shoreline Drive. The legislation itself is only authorizing what we're calling Phase 1, which is the preliminary engineering, preliminary planning, and the public outreach and public participation. The preliminary engineering portions of these projects are the base of the projects, and they include existing condition analysis of the subsurface and sheet piling around the pier. And through discussions with Director Klein, they are necessary regardless what direction the city takes for the end uses of the pier and Shoreline Drive. These projects were prioritized during the bicentennial vision process last year, as well as Jackson Street Pier being prioritized by the Bicentennial Commission as their legacy project. Therefore, the city issued a request for qualifications the end of June 2016 to locate qualified consultants or consultant that could reimagine the pier and Shoreline Drive to improve current uses, activate existing spaces, and provide a gateway to our city from the water. Through this process, Osborne Engineering has been selected as the lead consultant. They were found to be the most qualified as well as their proposed subcontractors. The 2 pieces of legislation, again, authorizing preliminary engineering, planning, and the public process is what we're considering Phase 1. And at the conclusion of Phase 1, through the public process, the following are the general deliverables: a schematic design, site clearing and demolition plans, site layout plans, site utility plans, stormwater management concept plans for detention for post-construction stormwater quality, CAD plans with details, utility grading, coordination, and landscape package development, an outline of project specifications, illustrations and renderings, and a development budget estimate. So with this information, a refined scope and budget would then be developed for each project to complete detailed engineering and construction administration, which staff would bring to commission for consideration. The lump sum cost for Jackson Street Pier is $146,043, and Shoreline Drive is approximately $150,000. Both projects will be financed with no general funds. They'll be financed with notes or bonds from the Chesapeake TIF to pay for debt service. So again, no general funds will be used in these projects. At this time, with commission approval, I'd like to turn it over to Osborne Engineering and City Architecture to give a brief overview of what the scope entails and the public participation process, and then we could take questions. Myself and Director Klein has done a lot of research on the existing conditions and plans of the pier.
That'd be great, Ms. Byington.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commission President and Commission members. Thank you very much for having us here. My name is Bonnie Teowen. I'm an engineer with Osborne Engineering. Osborne has been, actually this year, we're celebrating our 125th anniversary. We're the oldest privately owned engineering consulting firm in Ohio. Today, for this project and a lot of other projects that we've worked on, we teamed with City Architect And
My name is Alex Pesta. It's nice to see some familiar faces. We've worked with the city and with a lot of the residents over the last year. We were instrumental, or we were involved with the bicentennial plan that was wrapped up in December of 14. So it's nice to be back, or 15, I'm sorry. It's nice to be back and seeing how that planning work has really set the stage for what Bonnie is really going to take and run with as part of the engineering study and the next steps here. So as I mentioned, it was part of the Jackson Street Pier, as Mr. Swanger identified, was mentioned and discussed heavily in the bicentennial plan, notably the downtown initiatives that were outlined. We've done our research, not to kind of argue the validity of the project. That is certainly going to be part of our process moving forward if you choose to release Eric and his staff to engage us officially. There is going to be a robust public process. We will be coming out to the public at least on 3 occasions. One would be to gain information, collect further data, what works, what doesn't work, what would you like to do on the pier, what wouldn't you like to see here, really to open up those lines of communication. The second would be us coming back, testing some of those initial ideas to see really what sticks, identify a preferred alternative. That's where Bonnie and Osborne's work really kicks into high gear from a technical aspect. We start to see what the underground utilities are, what the conditions are. I know that she's going to speak on that a little bit. I kind of jumped out of turn here, but I got going. I get excited about this stuff. Go ahead.
so what I would say is Alex brings a history of the project to us, and he also brings a pretty picture of the project. But as an engineer, we're the reality check of the project. That, we look at the existing conditions, we look at the constructability, and we also look at the budget of the project. And that's really what the stage 1, phase 1 part of the project is really doing a reality check of all these ideas that we have and really drilling down into what are the details, what do we really need, and what's the budget for some of those things. So we don't get too far down the line and realize, oh, we can't do this, can't do that, we don't have enough money for that. So this is the stage 1 to really set the stage, so to speak. There's 3 parts of the project that we're gonna talk a little bit about. The northern, what is called a parklet, which is, Alex informed me that really is a word, a parklet. I didn't know that. But it's the northwest corner next to Chesapeake Lofts, Shoreline Drive project, and also the Jackson Street Pier project. We're going to talk a little bit about each one of those. First of all, this is what a parklet looks like. So now we all know. And, just real quickly, some of the things that we as engineers have to look at is, the true ownership. That we have a survey as a subconsultant to us that's going to look at the ownership and who, the boundaries of that. So if any work is being done, we don't get too far down the road and then find out, well, maybe we don't really know who the owner is on that. Shoreline Drive project. This project, the limits of the project go from Lawrence to Franklin, includes all of that. It also includes some of the parking at Jackson, and as well as the intersection of Wayne as well.
Just our familiarity with the area is just that there's a lot of challenges, and that's where Bonnie's work is really going to look at this. One of our initial studies and things that we heard during the bicentennial plan was ways to really put a front face on the back side of the buildings that are there. One of our community meetings was a good time, and when we got out and had that perspective looking back at the shoreline, you really are looking at the back of house in many cases. There are some properties that have done an amazing job as far as investment, but there still are challenges with where the dumpsters are, where there are electrical transformers, where other utilities are, and through the engineering, through the survey, we'll be able to identify how we work around some of those elements. Aaron will be the first one to tell you that as soon as we start to move curb lines and fire hydrants and all of the infrastructure that comes with that, it becomes incredibly expensive. So what we want to do is make sure that we work together, and what we do is we will come back to the community with a balanced approach. Is it going to look like this? No. I can tell you right now definitively the proposal will not be what is on the screen. This was something that was done at the planning stage. It was meant to start a conversation. It was meant to culminate a lot of the things that we heard. Programmatically, what we heard about Shoreline Drive, again, was what it looks like, what it feels like, and that it needs to be an active public space that connects east-west through the city, through some of the best park spaces in that waterfront experience. Those are our marching orders right now. When we have the community engagement piece, I'm sure that we are going to hear more. We are going to listen to everything. We will consider that on Shoreline, on the Chesapeake, and certainly on Jackson Street Pier.
And this is actually a good example of where the engineering comes into play, that, you know, before you even want to start thinking about what you're going to do here, you want to do an assessment of the existing utilities. You don't want to go and do this, you know, beautiful rehab to this and find out you have a bad sewer system or a bad water line. So that's what we as engineers, that's where the reality check comes in. And, you know, it's a pretty picture, but if you look at it real close, it doesn't have those transmission lines that you know, we look at when we're down there all the time. Is that something that we want to address? How much is that gonna cost? We'll put numbers to all of those wish list items to really get a reality check on what it is. So I like to keep this guy under control here.
Good luck.
An example of us working together, this afternoon I just came from a meeting from Cuyahoga Falls, which we were a partner with City Architect on. Cuyahoga Falls refers to this project, this Front Street project, it's their downtown transformation. This is a big deal to Cuyahoga Falls, and they put their faith in us to work together to come up with a plan. We're right now having discussions with contractors because the project is out on the streets. It's being bid right now as a design-build project. We developed the plans, worked with City Architect, we did the engineering, they did the streetscaping part of it, you know, worked with the community as far as what does this street need to look like.
All right, so Jackson Street Pier. I mean, obviously it is a hot topic. I want to thank the Register for publishing the very conceptual, I'm going to say that again, very, very, very conceptual renderings that were done really to do exactly, the drive behind that was really to do exactly what it had seemed to achieve, and that was to continue a conversation, okay? To provide a little bit of context, Angie mentioned kind of how the consultants in this case are hired, and it's a competitive process through RFP, RFQ. Multiple consulting firms were interviewed. That rendering was a piece of work that we collaborated on and internally to prepare for that interview. Again, it was meant to start a conversation. It is not the ending point, it is really the beginning. And it was the idea of how can we take an identified underutilized piece of land in your downtown core and think of it in a different way. For every single person that lives, visits, recreates, you name it, there's a place for them on this pier, whether they're in a car, whether they're in a wheelchair, whether by foot, whether with their young family, whatever it is, as a core community green space or a core community public space, it needs to cater to all folks, okay? So when I say underutilized, it's not anecdotal. It's not that we did see 9 cars parked on it on our way to the meeting this evening, which is true. There are 297 parking spaces on that pier, according to the 2014 downtown parking study. The average utilization rate of those parking spaces is 45%. The peak is 74%. So yes, during the summer months, during the warm weather, you can see where that starts to shift. But what those numbers tell us is that it is an underutilized parking lot in the core of your downtown, which isn't going to attract the other types of investment and initiatives that we've heard some of the other ordinances address. It's not to say that it needs to be completely revamped programmatically, and that's where the public process really comes into play. So I took notes, I'm always listening. So the folks that stood up, and thank you for your time this evening. This is all part of the process. This is all part of the design and engineering process as we move forward. So I heard that needs to certainly cater to every single person, whether they are handicapped or what we like to refer to as accessible spaces. Seniors, every age needs to have a drivable experience, meaning that people need to park, need to have those views. Those are all parts and pieces that we have initially thought of as part of this, and that's what's reflected in that rendering that's in the paper. I'm not saying that that's what the overall vision is going to be. I can tell you right now, much like the Shoreline Drive project, I can guarantee that's not where we're going to end up. But we need to kind of spur the conversation and kind of, maybe in some instances push some buttons, but that's how we move the needle. That's how progress is made in an open way like this, which I will say in our work with Sandusky and the city officials and the folks that are in this room, it is a very open and transparent process. Never once did we have a meeting that there weren't people that were invited to, and those considerations were in that bicentennial plan. It's very reflective. And this is a next step to this. Bonnie says that she likes to keep me in check. I like to say I'm done planning. I think that we are all done planning on this particular piece of property. What we need to do now is roll up our sleeves and design it. And with her expertise and her team, not only can we design it, we know that it's going to be able to be constructed. We know that it's going to be able to be built from a budgeting standpoint, all iterative along the way. And that's really where we are in our process.
So specifically on Jackson Street Pier, a couple of things that we really do need to look at before we even think about where we're putting what is doing our geotechnical borings to find out actually what the material is and what we're constructing on. You can't build something if it's not good material underneath. And also the condition of the sheeting around the pier. It's never been inspected. We don't know what kind of condition it's in. So kudos to the city to say, hey, we need to look at this, and that's what we have included in our proposal, is to look at the condition of the sheeting, so that we can really put a dollar value on that if any repairs need to be performed. This is the experience now that you have on Jackson Pier.
I would just say that as Tim referenced, the planning work that was done, this was the initial concept. This was something that we threw out there. Again, it was to start conversation. We certainly heard the comments. I've shared with you guys before when we've been back in front of you. I do check in on the register almost daily. I see the comments, appreciate them. And so, again, we know that it's an iterative process. Right, and then, what this space can aspire to be is a project that Bonnie and her team are very familiar with, and that's Cleveland's Public Square.
So engineering, Osborne Engineering was the engineer of record for Public Square. And most of us look at this and look at the beautiful picture that, the beautiful area. It was highlighted during the RNC, and I like to think because of our great engineering, that's what kept everybody calm during the RNC. That's just what I'm thinking. But as an engineer, and Director Klein will appreciate this, if you take that and you peel back the top layer, what you'll see underneath there is a utility project. A large portion of the budget was spent on utilities and utility relocation. And probably more than needed to be, because when this was laid out as is, due diligence wasn't done. It was before we were on board. The due diligence wasn't done to move things around so that you wouldn't have the impacts to the utilities as it was. So we want to make sure that we're teaming together early on, and we're addressing all of those engineering issues at an early stage, so that we can put together a phase one, stage one project.
I would just say that, so after Bonnie figures out all what the utilities are underground, we get to do the fun stuff, right? So this is what, how people interact with the space. Again, I think that there are lessons to be learned from Public Square, other great public places and spaces like it, that can be applied to places like the Jackson Street Pier. Right, so I mentioned the rendering, and certainly it was published. Our internal brainstorming session led us to the list that's down the right. Again, this is the start, but you can see that we are literally all over the place when we want to consider the multiple uses and ways that people can access and utilize the site. So it's a bayfront plaza, potentially an observation deck, splash pad, dining patio. I'm not going to read everything through. But Vista parking and vehicular access are clearly on that list and need to be as part of this consideration. As far as how people move through the site, how far north the vehicles are kind of permitted, or where that drive loop might occur, it's all on the table. It's all to be discussed, and it's certainly part to be designed and engineered to really see kind of what parameters we need to work in, and certainly how we address and react to the public's comments. Again, you guys have seen it. I think you've talked quite a bit about it. It was absolutely successful to start a conversation. So I'm glad to see that worked. Our process, I talked on a little bit, but I want to say that there's 3 primary sessions or groups broken down in information gathering, where we'll test ideas, and then the final design will be kind of vetted out through the public. All at that point, or at each one of those stages, there's opportunity for us to listen and for us to learn and make changes as the design evolves. Multiple people and agencies that we need to talk to, whether it's Homeland Security, whether it's the ferry boat operators, ODNR. I mean, there's the challenge or the trick with working with waterfront property is probably most of you guys know in the waterfront community is that every jurisdiction needs to be talked to. So Army Corps of Engineers, that's where Bonnie and the sheet piling comes in. In fact, we're going to dive down and look at it. And then from that process, project costs, potential funding, sources, Angie, Eric can certainly talk in more detail about how the projects will be funded at different areas. And then what we want to end on is that programming has not been determined. That is part of the public process that is key to this, to make sure that this is reflective of the community's goals and desires. So with that, I'm sure that there are questions, and we're happy to take them.
Thank you both. Commissioners, questions and comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lockhart.
if you could you go back in your slides to where you had Cleveland? In there were some slides of downtown Cleveland, East 4th.
Oh, that was at the very beginning.
Keep going. There.
Yep.
There. In the lower right-hand corner, you'll see East 4th, and that's where the House of Blues is and all that, right?
Yes.
And so that's similar to how I can see Shoreline Drive. So I'll address Shoreline Drive first. I believe that in the boardwalk project, if you go to the boardwalk slide, that is somewhat exclusive to those buildings and businesses. Being that the height of the boardwalk it's at such a height that it's not as attractive as a pedestrian to just walk up there. And I believe that small business is the backbone of America and our communities. And so whatever we do, we should foster those businesses. And I'll give you an example. We should encourage the walking of pedestrians and shopping to all those businesses that are along Shoreline Drive. And if we create a space where there are vendors and little, bodegas or what have you, rather than building the boardwalk, why don't we take the money as a proposed idea, I should say, and activate the rear of these buildings where if someone does have a building in there or business in there, they can then do business out of the backside with awnings and things like we have on East 4th in Cleveland. And see, on the opposite side there, the north side where there's a sidewalk, perhaps you could develop a concept of where there's bodegas on the other side. So it creates an experience for residents that are just walking down there. For instance, Mr. Murray, to my left here, Mr. Murray has a business there with a certain number of employees there. I don't know what number it is. How many people work there?
Depends. 35.
You're in HR, so more than five. More than five.
35.
But those people would enjoy going out and taking a stroll to having lunch or purchasing things like that, and it would create a draw for people to come down. So that's something that I'd like to see down there. I don't know how it turns out, but that's to you. But moving on to Jackson Street Pier, again, I have to say that I am with the ADA and I'm sensitive to what they believe in. Traversing to the end of that pier can be extremely cumbersome for someone in a wheelchair, someone that just can't get out of their car, someone that may feel a personal discomfort from getting out of their car. It's a personal experience. I've driven to the edge of that pier, and probably everybody else in here at some point, and just wanted to sit there alone. So you have to be conscious of that going forward. I'd also like to know where you're gonna put the extra parking at that we take away from the pier. If we do create an attraction, perhaps we'll have more participants there, going down. So that's something I'd like to look at. Also, opening it up to transient boaters. You know, and one of the core things that we look at in a marketing sense, I believe, is that you want to market to the people you already have. So we want to be mindful of the people that we'd like to get to come to our city, but we also want to be respectful of the people that have lived here for many years. And so we have boaters, we're a boating community, but I've yet to see anything in mind of the boaters that are just right there. It's right there, in the edge of this picture, it's there. Boaters are there in a marina. So why not have a space for them to pull up on Jackson Street Pier perhaps, or to do fishing, or things like that, you know? So I want to make sure that's in the site layout. And also, I've heard a gentleman, Mr. Parthemore, you know, he has a perspective that he'd like to see something out on that pier, but then there are a lot of older residents that don't. So we have an age discrepancy, and so, again, you know, we want to make sure that we respect what's always been here, the ability to go out there and just sit, but then we do want to attract young people, young families, and keep it open too. So that's some of the things that I see in my perspective.
Further questions or comments, either on the legislation in general or to our guests?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Poole.
Is it Bonnie?
Bonnie, yes.
Engineer, yeah. On it's, you talked about geotech and base mapping. What does that break down to? I'm trying to figure out, there's multiple pieces to this. I'm trying to figure out what you're doing.
So geotechnical engineering is where you have a big rig come out, they drill holes, they take core samples, they evaluate the soil for condition, for strength, basically.
Okay.
They provide that to the engineers with a little bit of their own engineering, and then we determine,
Okay.
for example, what the roadway base would consist.
Get that concept. Okay, and the base mapping, what is that? What's that involve?
Mapping is the laying out of the plans, so you have a surveyor come in and they take all sorts of shots. They put that into AutoCAD or MicroStation, and they develop a base map. It's basically, it will give you elevations, it will give you the placements of buildings, curb lines, basically demarcating each of those, and then we use those base maps to create our detailed drawings.
That's the next, then what's next? That covers $50,000 worth of this on Shoreline Drive. What's the 69.9? What's that about?
I'm sorry.
It says Shoreline Drive. I'm reading it just says Shoreline Drive.
That would be
What are you gonna do there? It appears to be engineering.
It's the same thing that we do the base mapping, we lay out general, we do our general engineering, we look at the utilities, and we lay out the utilities in the base map. We will design a typical section for rehab of your roadway.
Rehab. Okay. You did base mapping on two different phases of this.
Yes.
You have
So
to base map again, the same area? Is that what you're
No,
telling me?
there's the base mapping of Shoreline, and then there's the base mapping for Jackson.
No. Perhaps you don't have the same sheet that I was given here. There's base mapping, survey including base mapping, Shoreline Drive, and then geotech, as directed by engineer. And then on the left-hand column of this, there's Osborne and city architecture.
Are you looking at
There you go.
this one?
That's the one, that's it. I believe it is. Yeah, you can start with Shoreline, 'cause it's the same for Jackson Street. So the line that's got Shoreline Drive on it, it's in your column, what's that for?
So the survey.
What are you doing?
The survey includes the base map for Shoreline Drive. There's a line item for 30,000 for, as directed by the engineer for DLP.
That was the first thing I
That's
asked.
actually going to do that's going to do the survey and the base mapping. And then right under there, the 20,000 is the geotech DOZ will also provide the geotechnical services.
What you described, okay, that's digging the holes, okay.
Right.
All right, now go down the next line.
Yes.
To the left.
So
What are we dealing with?
those two values, you have a line item for city architect that.
Yeah, just what are you doing? That's all I know.
Okay.
What are we getting for, what's that about?
So that's where we look at the existing utilities. We do the OOPS investigation, which OOPS is
Yeah.
utility investigation.
Don't dig in holes, don't dig a hole without asking, is that the one?
Right, exactly. We actually lay out where all the utilities are underground. That's where we get into our designing of our base pavement. And then where there's coordination with city architect as far as their concept and how that relates to all the utilities and the existing conditions out there.
Right, so Mr. Poolick, I think, as far as what are we gonna put in your hand at the end of that process?
I'm trying to figure out what the purpose of this is, okay? Is really, where are you going with this? What, what we're gonna
I
have.
have at drawings that are similar on the screen here. So those are design development drawings, conceptual drawings that are based on everything that Bonnie just said, that are engineered, that shows where all the pavement is, that shows where the potential landscaping is. It considers cross slope for ADA, site amenities, you name it, soup to nuts, it's in there from a streetscaping standpoint.
And also as well, you'll get a preliminary estimate as far as what's being proposed. We'll put an estimate together to make sure that, we're within the anticipated budget.
Thank you.
Commissioners, further questions or comments? Mr. Klein, you had something to add?
Yeah, I think maybe for clarity, just on that proposal, there are 24 items under preliminary engineering. The first item there is for the survey. The second item is for the geotechnical work. The other 22 items that are listed there would be covered by those extra dollars, the $69.9 and the $29.9 for city architecture in Osborne. So there is a significant amount of additional work that needs to be done to bring that into something that can actually be utilized and taken to the next stage of final design.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Further questions or comments? Ms. Twine?
First off, I appreciate all the public comments tonight in reference to this project. It is important for us to understand what it is that the public wants, so we're not just, running down a road that no one wants. I appreciate Mr. Klein's input and other city staff's input into the, Commissioner Poole asked a lot of technical questions about what we're going to be getting for our money. And I think it's important for us to basically see what we have before we start making plans on what we want, because we have to know what we have before we can start making plans into what we want. I don't mind telling my age. I'm 53 years old. I don't recall the city making these types of steps toward planning for community and planning for neighborhoods and planning for opportunities for our citizens to have an area for recreation. I think probably the important thing that I could remember growing up is when they built the Sandusky Mall out in, Perkins Township. And so I appreciate all of the steps that we as a city are taking to present a community that not only our citizens want to live and thrive here, but we're trying to draw other people here. And so I like the aspect that my daughter is 28 years old. Once she graduated from college, she had no desire to come back here. I want us to have things in the community that would draw young people back to this area. And I appreciate, again, the traditions that this community has and building upon those traditions. So thank you both for what you're doing. Thank you to the community. I believe this is an important project that we have for the city, and I'd like to see this continue to go forward.
Further questions or comments, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Lloyd?
I'll be abstaining since I own a property next to this for item 7 and item number 8. But I would like to say, Commissioner Twine, well said.
Further questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
I think that the Register's headline probably captured the essence of where we are at this step today. The pure speculation. And that's really what we're talking about, is speculation here tonight. And that should calm everyone's nerves just a little bit. We're spending, unfortunately, speculation comes with a price tag of about $300,000. But the reality is, we owe our forefathers a debt of gratitude. In 1978, they took $1 million and increased the size of this pier by about 40%. Imagine the asset that they delivered to us by doing that. I think Mr. Klein values this asset now at between $10 and $15 million if we didn't have it, if we had to create it. So for us to spend $300,000 on a $15 million asset, I think is money very well spent. And I'll be honest with you, I've worked in probably every building on Shoreline, on both sides of the street. I don't know how you can perform, I think we're getting a bargain on the engineering. The utilities are a nightmare. Just walk down there sometime and look at the electrical transformers, the sewer lines. I think Ms. Lloyd found out the dilemma of our sewer system on that street. These are things that you folks are going to sort out for us for this fee. I think we're getting a bargain, and this commission is not good at doing nothing. So I think we're going to continue to not be good at doing nothing, and I think we're going to do something with this, but it's going to be with very good guidance from both City Architecture and Osborne Engineering.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I do.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
Mr.
go ahead.
Brady's grammar teacher is calling, double negative. Tolerable, but Mr. Cool.
Yeah, I do have another question. You guys have talked long enough to confuse me a little bit, but I'll get this back. With regard to the geotech and the underwater check of the pier and that portion of the project on the right-hand side, from that information, that'll tell us what we have, correct? Okay. And part of.
Part of what we have.
Okay, the other part you're gonna tell us, the other part that doesn't tell us is where the utilities are and so forth.
Ownership, lease agreements, anything that's associated with that property would be part of our research.
Okay, that's fine. I appreciate that. Mr. Chairman, these are my comments. My thoughts are this. I can support the $82,720 that for the study at the first phase of this to tell us what we have. After we get past that, we're dealing with what we've done before. And as we have so much interest here, a little bit nervous because we have expressed multiple times since last year about utilization for people to drive out on the end of that pier. So Alex, who is going to propose to do this again, your first rendering reduced the parking to 81 from 290 and no access out to the pier. We've had 3 conceptual drawings since then that were shown today, and yet still there's no access out on the end of the pier. And it's like a tip drill where we keep talking about, we've heard everything you said and we're listening carefully and we're going to take care of you, take care of the things that you say, yet it doesn't seem to be coming anywhere near fruition. The other thoughts are, we did a study that identified the ownership and complete study on the northwest side, the parklet that you have a picture of. There's a complete set of drawings and we paid someone because they're going to put a fountain there that a commission decided that we didn't want to do that for several reasons. So I'm having problems as a commission paying to have that done again. Likewise, several years ago, and I can't put a date on it, around 2008, between then and 12, we also, because I remember the Main Street's push for it, we did a study that involved Shoreline Drive. And since I don't have it in front of me, I don't know all the things that were in it, but I recognize that is sitting on the shelf, waiting to be looked at. At the end of the day, if we do the portion of this that is the underwater, see what's on that pier, we can then have the conversation. And honestly, I believe we have the capability of talking with the community and deciding what we want to do. Essentially, the questions we're going to ask ourselves are, how many parking spaces are you going to leave on that pier to support the businesses that are there? That's a finite number. And then we're gonna have to identify where we're gonna park, move all the other the spaces we take away, where are we going to park them? These folks can't make that up for us. We have to sit down as a community, commission, staff, and identify that. And spending $200,000 asking for another conceptual drawing, this takes us another step closer to maybe what we're gonna do, that we're gonna still have to finish the things I just discussed, doesn't make any sense to me. We can come to you with phase two, I should say with the second portion of phase one, because phase two and phase three, detail engineering, to be determined. That's not even in this $300,000. That's a TBD, if I'm reading this correctly. We got a whole bunch more to do after we get done with this first $300,000. So I recommend that we not pass this as it's written. Come back next week. There's no rush. You're not going to do this until 2018. Get the engineering study that Aaron needs so that we know what's there. Have a conversation with the community about what they want to do out there. Get that settled, and then you can specifically look for what you need. Paying people to just do a general survey of utilities. I can see the wires in the ground, and somebody can probably tell me what it'll cost to dig up the concrete to bury it if that's what somebody wants to do. Ohio Edison will probably tell you that. And I think this is an improper spending of our money, and it's just one more study that'll sit next to the one that was done just like, similar to it in the past. So I can't vote for this as it is. I don't think we've thought it through well enough in terms of what it's gonna produce for us, and there's no indication that we're actually gonna gain from it. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Mr. Pesta, is my understanding that as part of the bicentennial planning process, you looked at all of the prior drawings and studies?
Yes.
And that the difference between what it is we're looking at here this evening and those earlier drawings were, this includes engineering, which is critical in order to be able to take the next step forward, and that we don't know what the step after that's going to cost. But this is a process where we have to take one step at a time, even though they are sometimes more expensive than others.
That is correct, and I can't cite off of the top of my head all of the studies that were done. I know that Councilman Klein was a study that was done on Jackson Street Pier. Part of that work also included concepts along Shoreline Drive. What I can tell you about where those studies left off and where this one picks up is that there is no overlap. There should be no overlap in scope. The renderings that were shown in the paper today, again, the intention was to start a conversation. But that's where those other studies stopped. That's where they ended up. That was the result of that planning process. This planning process, this design and engineering process is intended to start at that point and progress it to a point where you can put shovels in the ground. Because you can't do that right now. There's engineering, there's investment that the city has to make. It is expensive. And there's no doubt that on many days I wish I became an engineer instead of an architect because of the work that these guys do. It's complicated, it's very technical. But in order to go through the processes for permitting, in order to set the stage for this to occur, you can't do it with hand-drawn sketches, and that's what you have right now with part of those 2000. I believe the studies were done in 97 and 2001. If there's ones that were done after that, I can't recall off of the top of my head. But those are good. There's good content that's there, and there's certainly intent that's there, but you can't build a project on intent. It has to be engineered. And as soon as the Army Corps of Engineers or other authorities having jurisdiction start to ask questions, it can't be anecdotal. It has to be something that the process is gone through. And that's what this is intended to do.
Let me give you a little bit of an example of the engineering that's going to happen in this phase. We know by visual inspection that the west end of Shoreline Drive floods. and there's been some attempts to correct that. We as engineers go through and we actually do calculations. We determine how much water is coming in, how much is being infiltrated, and we can come up with an engineering concept as far as minimizing that flooding that's happening there. You know, how many catch basins need to be placed, that if we do, and that's something that needs to be done early on, can't be done later on. Are we addressing that specific issue? That's one of the things that we're gonna be looking at, and that's just one example when you talk about engineering and what we need to do that needs to be included in this phase, because again, we don't wanna get too far down the road, and we don't know what our realistic budget is of this.
Okay, let's be clear. We are having a debate on this particular item, which is item 7. This is about Jackson Street Pier. I appreciate the breadth of the discussion we've had on all these different items. But I want to make clear that the vote that we're about to call for is on item 7. But I don't want to cut off any other questions or comments. Commissioners, were there others?
Mr. Chairman, just finally, I think what's also an issue here for me with this project is I consider it not a very high priority in terms of the things that we need to do for the city. As we see more and more investment, actually private investment downtown, I think we sold several buildings with an article in the paper indicated that folks intended to put apartments in there. I see I believe that we need to be looking at how do we make that successful? Because success for everything downtown is about people moving down there. The kinds of things that we need to be, I believe we should be looking at is, for example, if you're going to put apartments in a Cook building or any of those buildings along Columbus Avenue, that first block, and access out of them is through the back door, where are they going to park? Well, we've got an alleyway back there that's a mess, that's dark, and perhaps we might invest in that. Likewise, the parking lot between Citizens Bank and the buildings on Columbus Ave. Those are the kinds of things that I think the city should be investing their money in now, because they'll pay off much better in the long run. And also, it's leveraging private funds. Concept of and that's really what I'm looking at. I'm looking at things like for us to be doing would be like putting in Wi-Fi, anything, parking, safety, perhaps Wi-Fi. Those are the kinds of things that I think we should be looking at now. Investing in Jackson Street Pier is not going to move one person downtown, and I would suggest the people who left Sandusky and moved out of town did not move to Perkins Township and Huron and Bellevue and these places because their downtown looked better than ours. And for us to invest this kind of money just in downtown doesn't make sense. This is significant, and I'm not certain, and that's why I'm going to vote no if we keep this as a package. And I would note that I said I fully support the idea of doing the engineering. You're quite right. The difference between the studies we did before and what you're doing now is the engineering, and I support the engineering.
Well, Mr. Webster, go ahead.
I just wanted to respond through the commission president to the commission and the audience tonight. First, on the issue that the city architecture rendering that was shown in the paper today hadn't progressed from the community conversations that had taken place in the comprehensive plan. I wanted to take the blame for that, because honestly, what had happened is that plan was adopted, the original one from the comprehensive plan that showed the conceptual rendering that was done as part of that plan. And then city architecture has not been working on this for several months or over a year to this point. Since then, they did that rendering as part of their application process. In fact, they went above and beyond what any of the other applicants did as far as doing a rendering for what the pier might look like, but they did that based in large part on what they had done for the comprehensive plan without the benefit of the conversations that all of us have had from December of 2015 to January of 2017. And so they based that on that plan, not on feedback from us. And so that is a more refined rendering of what got adopted in the comprehensive plan. In conversations with them, we've already begun discussions, should this pass tonight, about how we can take into account the feedback we're getting from the community and still deliver a great park in a way that meets that community input. The second thing that I wanted to say is that we've talked a lot about plans in Sandusky that didn't happen. I can tell you, and they showed Public Square on that board tonight. I was part of an advisory group for Public Square appointed by the mayor in 2007. That opened in August of 2016, I think. And so the reality is, these projects, to do them, take a significant amount of time. The more you break up these phases or scale back the contracts for these, the less likely you are going to get something that you can act on. And so I do believe that combining, not peeling back the piece of this from the concept selection as well as the engineering, I think probably makes it more likely that you'd invest less, but that it will never happen, and it will become another one of those plans that sit on a shelf. So I think combining those things is critical. And the last piece I will say, as someone who's been doing downtown economic development for over a decade, is that green space, because those apartments that Commissioner Poole talks about don't include backyards or front porches often, is one of the most important things you can do. And when you survey people who are considering moving into downtown urban environments, or developers who are either already making investments in Sandusky or considering making investments in Sandusky, and I deal with those people on a weekly basis, they absolutely want to see improved green space on the waterfront. They can figure out the parking situation. So I believe, and again, every bit of planning that we've done over the last 2 years is based on best practices of how you do downtown and waterfront development, and is based on what consumers of downtown will want, whether those are office workers or residents, as well as the amenities that those who are either making those investments or planning on making those investments are telling us they need before they'll put a shovel in the ground, like the city at a place like Jackson Street Pier. So.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Well, I want to say this. It is long time that we take these projects and these studies off the shelf and put them into action. And I think that's the step we're taking. There's no other way to move this forward. Mr. Waddington, I don't know if we've ever told you this story. My grandfather, when I was a kid, he was a farmer out here in township, and he had a lot of land that he farmed, and he had a couple-acre pond that he dug out. And when I was a kid, he took me out there a couple times in the spring, and he stocked the pond with fish. And what he would do in the spring is, my mother didn't know it at the time, but he would take a stick of dynamite and whip it into the pond.
I'm with you.
It would stun the fish for a moment,
I got you.
and then he'd take a quick count and see what it is that he needed to buy in order to be able to continue to stock the pond. Ms. Byington, you did a wonderful job with your stick of dynamite, throwing that into the pond and seeing, what ideas. That is exactly what we wanted. So I think it is time to take this off the shelf, and it's time to throw the stick of dynamite in the pond. And with that, Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Abstain.
Mr. Poole?
No.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Abstain.
Mr. Poole?
No.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 8, please.
Item 8 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Osborne Engineering of Cleveland, Ohio for professional design services for the Shoreline Drive Rehabilitation Project, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Then a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, quick question. I'm sorry, I might have missed it, but are both projects going to be done simultaneously, or will we be able to do Shoreline first, or how is that going to go?
You want to handle that? Yeah, our preference would be to do them both at the same time, because there's an advantage, a cost advantage to doing them at the same time. And then from your perspective, Alex?
I would just say from a public input also, I mean, there's ways that, certainly both of them are related, they should be. And so if there are considerations or things that we hear from the community on one, it needs to impact the other, that's my opinion. Certainly can be managed either way, but you are gonna lose, I believe, some efficiencies.
By way of example, if you do geotechnical, there's mobilization costs for each time you do shoreline, and then a mobilization cost if you would do it at a separate time for Jackson Pier. So if you have the geotechnical rigs here, you might as well keep them here, do all the soil borings all at once.
Mr. Chairman.
You would follow?
Yeah, just briefly, I want to say that for me to vote yes to this, to see the layout and designs and things that you can do there, it comes to mind that when we go on vacation, we go places and we go, gee, you know what? South Beach is great, or Maui is really great. I'd love to live here. That's what you need to do here. You need to make people say, I want to live there. Or did you hear about, Sandusky Shoreline Drive? It's amazing. It's beautiful. We walked down there. And so for me to vote yes beyond this, I need to see something great, not just something that's mediocre or nice or some trees. I need to see something great going into the bicentennial.
Mr. Waddington.
I guess I got one concern, and that's with the rail. I know when I was on commission before, we looked at that when we were gonna repave it at one point, and I don't think it ever occurred, but we have that rail running down Shoreline. Is there where are we at with that? Is that gonna be a possibility we can get that out now? Because that would save years with it as far as.
Through you, Mr. President, when we did Columbus Avenue a year and a half ago, we took all the rail out on the section that had rail, and that is our intention, because that stuff just deteriorates the pavement so much quicker. You can even see it right now out there on the east end. So my goal would be to get it all out.
Further questions or comments? Given the proximity of my office building to this particular project, I will be abstaining on this. And if there are no further questions or comments, Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Abstain.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Abstain.
Mr. Poole?
No.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Abstain.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Abstain.
Mr. Poole?
No.
Mr. Harris, I believe that the motion failed, but the legislation passes on first reading.
You are correct,
Thank you. That'll be on the agenda at the next meeting then.
for a second reading.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Cresser, would you present item 9, please?
Item number 9 is a resolution declaring the necessity for the city to proceed with the proposed 2017 tree removal and trim project, approving the specifications and engineer's estimate of cost thereof, and directing the city manager to advertise for and receive bids in relation thereto, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this resolution under suspension of rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion?
Chairman.
Waddington.
I'd like to ask Mr. Link, the process, we are looking at maybe these trees down going in the next year.
This is just to go out for bid.
Right. But I mean, we are gonna be looking at a process from like last winter going into next winter, correct?
Yeah, we're currently putting together.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we're continuing to move forward.
And can we still call, can residents still call?
Yes, still call the public service.
Gotcha, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Lockhart.
I heard from some residents that they were concerned about how we were taking down trees in relation to the sidewalks and the tree program. And I've talked to Director Link and Mr. Klein about this, and so I'm well versed on how we're doing this, and we're doing this in multiple programs. And in the tree commission, we've identified some trees that don't need to come down or residents don't want. So there's a process going on right now, and I believe Mr. Klein can speak to that. We actually have someone that's going out making sure that we are taking down the trees that should be taken down, and the ones that shouldn't or may have some issue are not being taken down, if I'm correct, Mr. Klein? Or
Mr. President, yeah, that's what Commissioner Lockhart's referring to is the sidewalk program, and looking at the trees and figuring out which trees to remove as far as the sidewalk program is concerned. And yes, right now, before the contractor starts back up, we have our arborist going out with another staff member, and they're looking at and doing a brief write-up of every single tree and providing a recommendation to us on what to do as far as the sidewalk program is concerned for next year.
Right, and that program is separate of Director Link's program to remediate trees. And so if you could just give a little brief idea as to what you're doing versus what Mr. Klein's doing. I know it's running side by side, but just to let people know that there's actually two different things going on.
Well, the idea is that if we pass this legislation, we will send out our bid for the removal of 61 trees and I think trim 39 or whatever the number is. I don't have it off the top of my head. If we do that, the idea is to take our urban canopy, remove the dead and dying trees, dangerous trees, things that come down in the storms, trim other trees to promote healthy growth, make them stronger, hopefully wind resistant is a weird word to use for trees, but to help the wind move through the trees so they don't come down in those types of situations. That is what we are trying to do in this particular legislation.
Right. I just want people to know that there's two separate things that are going on in the city, but their trees are being taken care of, and we're going to be getting to a lot of them in 2017.
Further questions or comments on this particular piece of legislation? Ms. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
And now on the resolution?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
That resolution is adopted. That completes our regular agenda items, and we turn now to Mr. Witzer for his city manager's report.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'll start with donations. The first, I'd ask for a motion to accept a donation of $25 to the Police Department Trust Fund in memory of William Nixon from the Soloway family.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and second discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved with our thanks to Mr. Soloway and his family and with our condolences to the chief and his family.
Thanks, Commissioner. Moving on to new and old business. First, this will be the first of adding a bicentennial commission update to this. Commissioner Waddington thought it would be a good idea, so Mackenzie put this together. First, many committees of the Bicentennial Commission are up and running and working on their individual responsibilities. Those committees include a marketing committee, which is working on a website, as well as creating a social media campaign tied to the bicentennial and looking at merchandise. There's a bicentennial ball committee that has met and is working on solidifying a contract with Cedar Point in order to hold the bicentennial gala in the ballroom of Cedar Point. It'll be the first time they've held an event there in some time. It should be very exciting. There's a history committee that's creating many walking tours and looks to expand those tours over time. They're also looking to do a speaker and exhibit series during the year of the bicentennial and incorporating technology and history together during that year. There's a community involvement committee that's having its kickoff meeting within the next few weeks. The intention of this group is to gather the schools, churches, and community organizations and residents together to ask how they'd like to celebrate the bicentennial, as well as to connect them to the resources in the calendar of the Bicentennial Commission. And then capital projects. Obviously, we discussed one of those potential projects tonight, but they're also looking at a number of smaller projects, including public art, that could be implemented as a legacy of the bicentennial. Moving on to the police department, I wanted to provide an update that they have created a barking dog warning form. We have many commissioners and citizens who have complained about barking dogs. So police, if a barking dog call comes in, they'll dispatch an officer. The officer will determine whether there's an issue and take appropriate action. If the resident is not at home, we will leave behind a form to let them know that we've been there. Oftentimes we were hearing that the police never showed up, and it turned out from our reports that they were. So this is a way, and we're looking at exploring this with many services, that when we're called, we leave a physical form on the door so that people know we were there, even if at times often we don't come into contact with the person who made the call. If the citizen is complaining and has audio or video footage of the dog barking, and it encompasses the time limit per the city ordinance, which is more than 5 minutes continuous or 15 minutes intermittently, Prosecutor Lynn Gass-King has let us know that she will use that audio or video footage for documentation of the violation of the barking dog ordinance. Moving on to the fire department, just to let the commission know that we've made 2 hires to replace employees who left the department. Doug Martin started in January, as well as Nicholas Westlake. Also, there's a finance committee meeting scheduled for February 24th, 2017. at 7:45 a.m. That is in this commission chambers at 222 Meg Street. Moving on to the Public Works Department. The Big Island Water Works processes millions of gallons of water a day for the city and Erie County. We conducted a test with the Ohio Army National Guard to establish a partnership with the city to explore the potential to treat and transport water to nearby communities during emergencies, such as the one that occurred in Toledo in 2014. Over a dozen Army personnel traveled with vehicles, including a 2,000-gallon water supply tank. And it was a pretty incredible thing. I know that Director Klein and Commissioner Brady worked very closely on that. And we think this is a good thing that we can do for others in their time of need. And we also know that other water systems are going through similar training should we have an issue with our water supply. Also, the combination fuel engine at the wastewater treatment plant was rebuilt according to emergency approval granted by the Commission in August. The engine and pump have been in full operation since December, once again serving as the main pumping system at the plant. Moving on to community development. There will be a public meeting regarding transient rental on January 30th, beginning at 6 p.m. at Sandusky High School, room 300. Again, a transient rental meeting at January 30th at 6 p.m. at the high school in room 300. City staff will present general alternatives regarding regulations, and public input will be sought at that time. Also, a save the date, as you know, and most of the commissioners have been participating, as well as many members of the public have been undergoing a Sandusky neighborhood initiative, in which we received a $350,000 grant from the Dorn Foundation, as well as dedicated at the end of last year $900,000 in city dollars towards that. There'll be a presentation on the individual proposed neighborhood plans for this initiative beginning at 10 a.m. on Saturday, February 18th in the stateroom of the Sandusky State Theater. Citizens are invited to attend one or all of the neighborhood presentations, as all 6 neighborhood plans will be presented back to back with a lunch provided to audience members from noon until 1 p.m. Flyers with specific times for each neighborhood are located at the rear of the room. Notice and times will also be advertised in the Sandusky Register and will be posted on the city website. The following are the times for the specific neighborhood presentations. The 1st through 5th Street neighborhood, or McKelvey Platte, will be at 10 a.m., the Cove District at 11 a.m., south of Kilbourne at 1 p.m., the Garden District at 2 p.m., the West Side neighborhood at 3 p.m., the South Side neighborhood at 4 p.m. And I see Eric Jordan, who's been a member of that steering committee, is in the audience tonight, so we thank him for his participation in that planning process. Also, the city's Department of Community Development is now accepting applications for housing development and beautification assistance for 2017. The city fully expended all $250,000 in 16 and is currently projecting that $300,000 will be available in the 2017 budget. Applications will be accepted on a rolling basis until all funds are exhausted. Newly revised applications are available on the city's website or can be picked up in person in the Department of Community Development. Anyone with questions on the program or to discuss eligibility requirements are encouraged to contact Maria Muratori at 419-627-5891 or via email at muratori@ci.sandusky.oh.us.
Mr. Manager?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I just wanted to add into that right now. I just got the date back. In my work talking to citizens about the housing and housing development and beautification process, I encountered some of them were having hard times filling out the application, so I asked the staff in the development to come with me and host an open house to explain how to fill out the applications and possibly get together with some contractors too. So I just got a date for that, so I just want to let everybody know. In conjunction with that, we have a date at the Sandusky Firehouse. It'll be February 15th, where we can all get together. So I'm inviting anyone in the public that's interested in the new application for housing and development to come to the fire station February 15th, and we can all sit and help fill out the application and get information from the staff on the program.
Do you have a time, Mr. Lockhart?
They did not give me a time.
I think we're proposing on 5:30 is probably a good
5:30.
time, so 5:30 to 6:30
5:30,
at
that's
the
good.
Central Fire Station.
So yes, so 5:30 tentatively, so I guess we'll have a firm time on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Lockhart. I think that's a great idea. The more we can get the word out on these programs, the better. Obviously, the programs are well used, and we've heard from realtors and residents that they're very excited about it. And individual staff and development are available for one-on-one appointments as well. So the more we can do to get the word out and help people through that process, and likely many of the people who need the most help are the ones who could use the most education on it, so we thank you for that. The next planning commission meeting is scheduled for February 1st at 4:30 PM in the first floor conference room. Items for discussion include recreational vehicle parking and zoning regulations regarding chickens. Also,
Sorry for the confusion. We're still having the regularly scheduled planning commission meeting on the 25th, but the discussion on the chickens and the recreational vehicles will have a special meeting on February 1st.
stand corrected.
Sorry for the confusion.
Okay, so the planning commission meeting is January 25th, chickens on the 1st.
Chickens and recreational vehicles.
And recreational vehicles.
Special planning commission meeting on the 1st.
I don't know why that was so funny, I was just reading what was on the paper.
Chickens are funny.
Chickens are funny, yes. Moving on, the next transient rental is on special planning commission meeting. So that's in addition to the public meeting on January 30th. The 8th will have a special planning commission meeting, also at 4:30 PM for transient rental. I apologize about the massive information, all facts. The next landmark commission meeting is scheduled for January 25th, following the planning commission in the first floor conference room. The Board of Zoning Appeals meeting is scheduled for February 16th at 4:30 PM in the first floor conference room. And that concludes my remarks, thankfully, for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. You were mercifully brief. Questions or comments for the city manager? Any items of old business?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Lloyd?
I don't know if this is old or new, it might be a combination of both, but, and I'll apologize, I'm gonna read this, so I don't talk for 20 minutes. But I'd like to take a moment to commend the commissioners that were able to vote on Jackson Street Pier and Shoreline Drive tonight. I know that you see the future. I would hope that as we go forward, whether you have developed a property or not, you'll really take into consideration that our staff knows what it takes and is trying to bring us through the proper steps to get to the final product. It's been a great first year. Definitely some up and downs, and I feel through our boards and commissions, we have made some good decisions, and I feel that on other topics, we could have done a better job. There was the Jackson Street Pier rendering that was on the front page today that's been circling around through social media over the weekend. It's received a lot of attention. Keep in mind, it's just one of the possibilities. I want to encourage all of you to keep an open mind with this and take note. We need to keep moving forward to attract new residents, new businesses, and keep our tourists feeling welcomed. To do this, it's not going to just be Jackson Street Pier. It's going to be keeping our city clean. It's going to be making our downtown attractive in a way of business and of leisure. We need to be good neighbors and work together through this process. We have an opportunity to attract so many to our area. Jackson Street Pier and Shoreline Drive are two fantastic opportunities for community gathering spaces. Mr. Parkmore brought up Navy Pier in Chicago, or you could look at Mallory Square in Key West. And it is one of those places someone else had mentioned. If you haven't seen someone for a while, go to Jackson Street Pier, you'll run into them. We can still keep that space as a gathering space, but just improve it and make it better. For those of you that say, I want to drive up to the water, the new parking that will exist on the pier, no matter what the location, you'll still be able to eat in your car and see the water. You may have a beautiful park to view as well. Or if you're already in your car, you can drive to Lions Park. Sandusky has so many spaces to go to. There's Shelby Street Boat Ramp, there's Shoreline Park, there's the City Marina, all where you can catch a view of the bay and have lunch and sit in your car, whether it's 20 degrees or 80 degrees. A lot has been said about handicap accessibility tonight. I would say if we focus on handicap accessibility, many of you will be very happy with the Jackson Street Pier makeover. For those of you who think I'm saying this because I own property across the street, I'd like you to know why Ryan and I moved back, and that is because we wanted to help Sandusky. We know the potential. We know that we can attract many more to the area, including the gentleman that's just purchased many properties that was in the Sandusky Register last week. We had zero plans of opening a hotel downtown, but Sandusky needs it. That's why we're here. Please have confidence in what our staff is trying to bring to you. If you do, you will see and have already started seeing change. You've seen improved streets, new sidewalks, neighborhood improvements, old trees coming down, new trees being planted. One of the things that I would like to revisit, it's been almost a year since we addressed smoking ban in parks. Children not only play on the playground, but they're all over the parks. Over the weekend, I was in Shoreline Park, and the amount of cigarette butts is astonishing. So not only were people smoking near there, but also littering on top of that. So last time it came to the table, someone made the statement that it takes away personal liberties. So I think we all need to kind of look to ourselves and say, what about the personal liberty to breathe fresh air? What about every human that walks, runs, or plays in our parks? Their personal liberty to breathe fresh air. In July of last year, Glenwood Springs, Colorado put a smoking ban on their downtown core area and their parks and their trails. Boulder, Colorado has had a smoking ban in town for years. So Ms. Doherty had mentioned that she wants us to be a trendsetter. Someone else mentioned tonight, it was Mr. Shade said, we need to start doing things so other people follow. So it would be really nice if we could bring Sandusky into the 21st century and maybe implement some of these things. Since joining the commission, I've been told that Sandusky is not ready for that yet. I hope to never hear that statement again. Sandusky is ready and Sandusky needs it. And the last thing I'm going to touch on, we have our transit rental meetings that are set up. I hope to see you at our public meetings. At our last public meeting, people had a lot to say. And so what I ask of you is that you join us and listen, but not only listen, really hear what's being presented. Again, to move forward, we need to be open-minded. Some issues that were brought up at the last meeting could be addressed by simply being a good neighbor. Also, some issues that were brought up can't be changed. So I would ask that you support the decision that is best for the city as a whole, and not just a personal situation with that. So, and with that, I will step off my soapbox. Thank you.
Other items of old, I guess we are still on old business. Other items of old business.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Klein.
I want to thank the public that came out for our recent office hours on January 11th. We had about a dozen people show up. I thought it was a pretty good meeting. We had some issues and concerns that we're still in the process of addressing, but I think for the most part, it was a good meeting. I look forward to scheduling another one in February.
Other items of old business.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
In tagging off of that same concept, Commissioner Watkins and I hosted a coffee with the commissioners at Mr. Smith's Coffee House, which we've done several in the past, and we were blessed with 18 residents that showed up and have a list of 18 issues to pass as we typically distribute them to staff for some type of resolution or input on them. One of the very important things I think that came out of that meeting was, I believe, Dave, we've decided to move that coffee with the commissioners into this chamber on Saturday morning if it is available. And no, we're not being asked to leave, Mr. Smith. But we do get large groups, and the volume does go up a little bit sometimes there. And I think it is instead of it being a help to Mr. Smith, I think it's a hindrance to him. So we'll buy our own coffee and show up here on Saturday. On Saturdays, we do that from now on. We're evolving.
Further items of old business.
Mr. Chairman?
Cool.
Just a last comment. I think as we move forward here, just to recognize that what's at issue here for some folks is who's the arbiter of deciding what is best for Sandusky. There obviously is the vote of the majority on this commission that comes down on one side or the other. But those are the individuals who perhaps have a different priorities for what we do. We're not holding Sandusky back. into the 20th century by any stretch of the imagination. And I just want to put that in mind. You know, some folks talk as though what's best for Sandusky is only what comes out of their mouths. And there are some of us who would just like a little teeny piece of what makes us comfortable. And what's going on has happened up to now is we'll have a public meeting in which you have a presentation for 45 to 50 minutes of what you plan to do, 7 to 8 minutes of questions on what exactly was presented, followed by, oh, we don't want to hold you very long, so I guess we're done. And I don't have I've got gas in my motorcycle. I'm pretty happy with whatever we do. But I'd like for you folks who seem to be quite sure that the development is the only thing that will make Sandusky a good place for people to live, recognize that there's more folks than just you who want to live here.
Further items of old business? Items of new business?
Mr. Chairman, I had an opportunity to speak with City Manager Woopser earlier today on a concept that I've asked him to embrace with the help of code enforcement and the police department, and that is a war on cars illegally parked on the grass. That is a law and an ordinance that we've had on the books for some time. We have neglected the enforcement of that for far too long, and I think it's time to begin enforcing that ordinance, that law. And when I say a war on cars, I think it's a war on mobile blight is what that is. And I'm not interested in harming these people financially or making their lives uncomfortable. What I'm interested in is getting cars off of the lawns and getting cars off of the grass. And I understand that to prosecute this effort correctly, we're going to have to get our feet under us to do that. And we're going to have to get assistance from the police department. We're going to have to get assistance from the code enforcement. Perhaps it is a code enforcement issue, but I can tell you this, when a police officer shows up and tickets my car, I pay a lot more attention than I do when a guy shows up in an Impala with a city seal on it. So that's my concept of having the police involvement in this. And it's going to take us, I understand it's going to take us a while to get citation booklets together and to get a game plan together, but it is my expectation that that's going to happen in the next 60 days. And I think if we are telegraphing what we're going to do, I'm good with that. I want the message to go out. If I have to pay for an advertisement, I will do that. But I want the message to go out to people that are parking their cars on their lawns that this is not going to be tolerated, and we are going to take action on those issues.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Lockhart.
This is to Mr. Brady. Can you be a little bit more specific as to what you think the problem is or where the problems are? When you say parking on the grass, I mean, there are some areas I've seen where it may be grass, it may not be grass. So is there any specific things that you can outline that you might see or someone has complained to you about that is a problem?
When I travel to work in the morning, which is about a 6-minute drive, I look at 12 cars parked on people's lawns. Cars parked on their grass. Maybe parked at their front door, maybe parked at their side door. They are parking on their lawns. Can you imagine? I cannot imagine what their good neighbors to the right or to the left of them must think when someone parks their automobile on their lawn. If that, we have on the books a law that prohibits that, and all I'm asking for is the enforcement of that law.
Further items of new business?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Brady.
I would like to make a motion for an executive session regarding eminent litigation.
Motion and second. Discussion? Mr. Crester, would you poll the commissioners on setting the executive session?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
That executive session is set.
Mr. Chairman.
Brady.
I would like to make a motion for a second executive session regarding personnel, city manager.
Been a motion and second. Discussion? Mr. Crester, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
That executive
Yes.
session is set. Any other items of new business? Then we'll turn now to audience participation. Anyone wishing to address the commission on any city-related item, please step to the microphone, give us your name and address, and share with us your thoughts.
Thank you once again, Mr. Mayor. Timothy A. Schwanger, 362 Sheffield Way. Final comments for this group pertaining to the Jackson Street Pier. And again, I don't know how long Mrs. Lloyd's lived in the city of Sandusky, or her husband Ryan have lived in the city of Sandusky, but I was born and raised here for 59 years. Give you a little bit of history. At one time, local citizens, visitors, whatever, were able to drive out on the Make Street Pier and park and enjoy the sunset, enjoy the views. That was taken away probably about 1988, 1999, when Sandusky Bay Development took over Battery Park. Totally understand that we've got other options available, Lions Park, but when you park at Lions Park, you're looking at like maybe 1/3 of the bay. What about the rest of the bay? The Jackson Street Pier is the last location where the handicapped, the disabled, the elderly, guy like myself, can park at the water's edge and view the entire bay except for the east end of the bay. I can see Cedar Point. On a clear day, I can see almost all the way to Canada. I can see the coal docks, the entire bay. Now, as I said when I first got up here the first time, February of last year is when city architecture came up with their plans for the Jackson Street Pier. At that time, folks came to the podium and said, hey, what about parking at the end of the pier? That issue's been discussed right here at the Bayfront Corridor Committee meetings. Again, don't understand why almost a whole year later, we're looking at basically the same plan from a year ago that excludes any kind of parking at the north end of the pier. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's been a whole year. It gets discussed almost every month at the Bayfront Corridor Committee meeting with Ms. Byington. I assume that you guys are getting all the minutes from those meetings. And again, we're looking at the same plan from a year ago. No wonder the public gets excited and their blood pressure goes up over these plans, because we're seeing the same thing over and over and over again. Now, on the same topic, and it wasn't discussed here tonight, there is a possibility that we may be dredging the Jackson Street slip for the Jaman. Is that have we determined that that's a necessity? Have we dove down, have we taken soundings to see if we really need to spend that money on dredging? Thank you.
Sharon Johnson, 1139 Fifth Street. In regards to the Justice Center, I believe at the last meeting, they said that a committee had been formed. Is that correct?
That's what was said, yes.
Okay. Do the appointments usually be made, aren't they made during the public meeting or something from the city manager?
It was an advisory committee to the city manager. So he selected that committee.
An advisory committee?
To the city manager. They have no formal authority.
Is the public invited?
City manager is able to put together advisory committees as he deems fit to be able to get input on a technical basis, in this case in particular, in terms of the needs of the court and the police department, and to make sure that the site is appropriate, large enough, able to meet the ingress and egress needs, those kinds of more technical things.
So you're calling this a committee. So this should be open to the public and there should be minutes on this committee. Is that correct?
Harris.
Through you, Chair, President, unless it's passed through ordinance or we put it in our books as a viable boards and commission, I think that's what you're referencing. Any advice that he gets as the city manager from an advisory committee, you don't have to have minutes.
Okay. Could I sit in on the committee meeting or am I excluded, the public?
I don't want to speak for the city manager in terms of who he wants to sit on as an advisor, but you can ask him and he could probably get back with you on that.
Well, either it's open or it's not open.
It's not an open meeting.
Okay, so that takes care of it. Just wanted to ask about that. Okay, my next question here or comment, I know this is just my opinion. I'm a taxpayer. I'm concerned about how you're spending issue 8 money. This is a jaw dropper for me. And people say, well, it's done in other cities and it's in the comprehensive plan. That seems to be an excuse to waste money. We're going to give $450,000 issue 8 grant to the developer downtown for City Hall. When he starts that project, we hand him over a check for $450,000 grant, just a pure giveaway. And we have $400,000 more in an issue 8 grant on hold if he doesn't make his credits. That's a lot of money to give away in a grant. I could see a loan. I don't have a problem with TIFs or loans or whatever, but to give that kind of money away to a developer is ridiculous. And I recently learned that through these grants, one of the companies asked for a grant, and included in that grant is a $35,000 mural for the side of their building. And that grant comes from issue 8. We, the taxpayers, paying $35,000 for a mural? How essential is that? I think you better look at this, the giveaways, the grants. I'm just not happy with that at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And Mr. Wobser, I just want to clarify a point that is understandably confusing. But at the same time that the citizens approved issue 8, there was tied to that a piece of legislation that the commission adopted, and that was an increase in the admissions tax. And one of the things that we had a discussion with at the time, Mr. Wobser, you were the broker of this, was a discussion about, you know, what the issue 8 monies would be used for, as opposed to what the increased admissions tax would be used for. And so the economic development dollars, as part of a new deal, if you will, that was brokered at the time, was that half of those admissions increased dollars would be devoted to economic development. So it gets a little bit confusing, and I can understand that, but the issue 8 dollars are not used for economic development. Those are the admissions tax dollars.
Yeah, through the commission president. Through the commission president, when we were discussing with Cedar Point during the talks about issue 8, one of the things that was very important to them, and they demonstrated to us in the process of those conversations, that 40% of our general fund budget at that time was paid directly by Cedar Point or its employees, which they were very alarmed was a very high amount, and that if we did not diversify our economy, that it would cause them to have to consider how invested they could remain in the area. And so they asked, and the commission agreed, to set aside that one half of the admissions tax, 98.8% of which is paid by people buying a ticket to Cedar Point, for economic development purposes. So in their words, it would help us to broaden our tax base so that we weren't so dependent on them, and that if something happened in the park, we wouldn't immediately rush to increase their taxes.
Thank you, Mr. Wobser. Anyone else present wishing to address the commission? Then we will take.
Mr. Chairman, before you go, just for clarification, and I'm embarrassed. We approved a $35,000 amount for a mural. I didn't think we did. Please tell me what we actually did, or bring me up to speed.
Through the commission president to Commissioner Poole and to Ms. Johnson, members of the community, there was a collective financial package put together for Imagine Baking, which included entire exterior painting of the facility, which I believe borders Franklin to the east and Scott to the south. Then there was a complete reconstruction of the roofs that are on the shipping bays. And then there's also a financial package that assists with the building of a wall on the interior of the property to devise the production line so they can do gluten-free production and gluten production. So that's not this, as part of their as part of their project, they are doing a $35,000 mural. The city is not anywhere near paying for the percentage that has been brought up this evening. So it was part of the painting included a mural on portions of the property, and that's simply it.
And so, Mr. Chairman, let me just say, that project is going to beautify a neighborhood that's once been considered to be pretty blighted in the city. This is a project that goes out into the Hancock area, which is, I guess, north of Scott Street. And that area, most people see has been an eyesore. And so, imagine Bakery repainting the entire exterior of the building, not just a mural. A mural just enhances and actually could be a catalyst to launch what the neighboring buildings or property owners do in that area. So this is something that's going to benefit a neighborhood, not just downtown, but an actual neighborhood that needs it. And so the entire exterior will be repainted and once again starting on the road to beautification.
We will take a 5-minute recess.